Chapter 13:16. Yizue smacked his lips and closed his eyes to feel it. He said, "There is indeed the scent of the legendary divine dragon. You've already digested all of it. It's useless now. What a pity." He smacked his lips again. From the looks of it, if there was still the power of the divine dragon in Chu Yang's body, he wouldn't mind eating Chu Yang alive at all. Chu Yang's hair stood on end. This guy really dares to eat people. He hurriedly took out some medicine and applied it on the bitten area. He cursed the sword spirit endlessly in his heart. The sword spirit looked innocent. How can he believe it if he doesn't take a bite and taste it? Chu Yang said angrily, "But where does the scent of the divine dragon come from on me?" The sword spirit was speechless. "You have Ao Shiyun's gift on you." Chu Yang was tongue-tied. Yizue was already so jealous that his eyes were red. Why didn't such a good thing happen to me? Isn't it easy to be hunted down? I just casually went around the territories of the various clans and killed a few important people. Wouldn't I be hunted down endlessly? Chu Yang let out a wry laugh. This is just luck. This is simply heaven-defying luck. Yizue said furiously. From the looks of it, he was still brooding over the fact that such luck didn't happen to him. Actually, I should really thank the luck this time for changing me. If not for this incident, I would just be a good-for-nothing. Chu Yang continued to act according to the sword spirit script, his voice full of emotion. You don't know that before this, I was stuck at Martial Grandmaster and couldn't advance no matter what. Everyone said that in my lifetime, I would stop at Martial Grandmaster. Sure enough, when Yizue heard this, his eyes suddenly lit up. He sized Chu Yang up carefully before a smile appeared on his face. He laughed strangely. "So you were once a good-for-nothing too, yes? Could it be that you were too?" Chu Yang followed up. Yizue's face darkened. His eyes shone with a vicious light. He said slowly, "That was a humiliation that I can never forget in my entire life." Chu Yang let out a long sigh. Everyone has a bitter past. This sigh made Yizu empathize with each other even more. Right at this moment, the gray-robed man on the mountain peak also let out a long sigh. There was an interested look in his eyes, as if he was interested in Yizue. He was also very interested. Then he raised his hand, and a faint wisp of spiritual consciousness floated down. "However, I can't tell you about my bitter past. It's just that I can't bear to think about it. Originally, I was also a good-for-nothing. As for how I became stronger, I can't tell you even if I die." Yizue was very tight-lipped. Chu Yang was somewhat disappointed. He thought to himself, "It seems that I still can't get anything out of him." In the tribulation space, the sword spirit sighed in disappointment. Suddenly, Yizue heaved another long sigh. Suddenly, he changed his tone and said, "But it's okay to talk about it. You and I are strangers. There's no harm in telling you." Chu Yang was stunned. Why did he change his mind? Just a moment ago she said, "I'd rather die than tell you." The next moment, it actually became, "It's okay to tell you." Fuck, is this Grand Duke crazy? Such self-contradictory words. He actually dared to say it out loud. Yizue gritted his teeth and said, "Back then, when I was born, I was known as a genius with unblocked meridians. When I was young, I was already interested in swords. I advanced at an astonishing speed and became a sword king when I was 15 years old. I was the only one in the entire heavens. The clan made me a Grand Duke and hoped that I would bring glory to the Yi clan. I was also very proud of my achievements. But after 15 years old, no matter how I cultivated, I realized that I couldn't improve at all. I once didn't eat or drink for half a month and just practiced swordsmanship. When I was tired, I would cut myself a few times, but it was completely ineffective. When I was 18 years old, the clan finally couldn't take it anymore. They invited a high priest from the Medicine Valley to take a look at me. Only then did they know that a certain section of my meridians was naturally narrow. Although it was just a small section, it couldn't be improved for the rest of my life. In other words, when I became a first-grade sword king, it was the highest level in my life. And there was no cure for it. When the clan found out about this, they immediately abolished my position as Grand Duke. During that period of time, although I was still desperately cultivating every day, no one paid attention to me anymore. Yizue gritted his teeth and smiled viciously. When I was 24 years old, during winter, everyone in the clan was having a meal together, but no one informed me. I snuck out of the clan and came here. He pointed at his feet. I went up the pagoda mountain alone on New Year's Eve and wandered around aimlessly. I even thought of dying. Then, I don't know what happened. I walked to a fork in the road and kept walking. Suddenly, I barged into a patch of clouds. In the midst of the clouds, I discovered a cave entrance. It was very cold then, so I went in. And, undeniably, that cave entrance also seemed to be beckoning me to go in. After I went in, I discovered a strange corpse. Yizue tilted his head, a ferocious look on his face. He said, it was a very, very strange corpse. In any case, it wasn't human. It looked like a monkey. Yes, it was killed by a sword. That sword was pierced into the corpse's chest. I found it strange. Why was there a corpse in this cave and a sword on the corpse? Since that person had killed this monster, why didn't he take the sword away? Right at this moment, that sword suddenly vibrated. I clearly heard someone talking to me saying, if you pull out this sword, you will own the world. At that time I thought, I'm already fucking crippled, what world can I own? So I didn't pull it out. Yizue heaved a long sigh. Now, I really regret it. If I had pulled out that sword back then, my achievements might have been far greater than what I have now. This result was really beyond Chu Yang's expectations. He didn't pull out the sword? From what Yizue said, Chu Yang and the sword spirit unanimously agreed that that sword was most likely the weapon of the extraterrestrial demon and had demonic properties. Yizue probably achieved what he had today because of this sword. But they never expected that he didn't pull out the sword. Yizue sighed for a long while before he said, at that time, I was also extremely scared. I kept feeling that this matter was a little strange. Then I realized that there was still half a scabbard on the ground. I thought, why don't I take this scabbard first? So I grabbed the scabbard in my hand. But the moment I grabbed it, I suddenly felt dizzy. The scabbard seemed to have a spirit and power. It pulled me towards the sword. I wanted to throw it away, but I couldn't. I struggled with all my might. I didn't expect that my head would hit the wall of the cave and I would faint. But I didn't notice that the scabbard actually stood up from the ground and I sat on it. When Yizue said this, Chu Yang couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. Think about it. What if half a scabbard was stuck in the ground? Sitting on it? If I sat on it, Minister Chu suddenly felt a chill run down his ass and couldn't help but tighten it. When I woke up, I was covered in blood and the scabbard was already gone. Yizue continued. Chu Yang felt even more like he was about to burst out. Nonsense, of course it's gone. It even did that. I still had a feeling that there was still a force pulling me toward that sword. I was really scared and scrambled out of the cave. I didn't even know how I went down the mountain and returned home. The family was still having a feast and drinking celebration. No one noticed that I was covered in blood and stains, and no one knew that I went out and came back. Yizue let out a wry laugh. Or perhaps they knew and just didn't care. It was only several days after I returned home that I realized that the scabbard hadn't disappeared. Instead, it had fused into my body through my blood. Chu Yang rolled his eyes and thought to himself, I'm afraid it definitely didn't enter through your blood, right? Instead, it was you who swallowed that sword directly under some kind of lucky coincidence. Otherwise, how could it have let you go so obediently? As he listened to Yizue's story, Chu Yang was suddenly filled with admiration for this world. Just how much of a coincidence did it have to be to create such a world-shaking figure like Yizue? Such an encounter was definitely something that no matter how hard one racked their brains, they definitely wouldn't be able to come up with. And on that scabbard, there was the first half of a mental cultivation technique and the first half of a sword technique. As for the other half, it was on the sword that I didn't manage to grab. Yet that latter half was the most important. At this point, Yizue was incredibly depressed. And there was a huge secret on that sword. That was even more of a pity. Sigh, having half a scabbard in my body, this feeling is really... Yizue sighed. At first, I also felt very uneasy, but then I realized that my meridians had suddenly returned to normal. I suddenly started to improve again, and that narrow section of meridians had already returned to normal. So I wondered if it was because of this half a scabbard? So I thought of trying to cultivate the upper half of the mental cultivation technique. I didn't expect that after trying it out, my cultivation would improve by leaps and bounds. My cultivation speed actually reached more than 10 times the usual speed. Yizue said heavily, this half of the mental cultivation technique is called the Heavenly Demon Great Law. The moment the words Heavenly Demon Great Law left his mouth, the expression of the sword spirit in the tribulation dimension changed. Chu Yang could even sense the sword spirit's fear. He couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart as well. Could this Heavenly Demon Great Law really be so terrifying? Of course I was happy that the Heavenly Demon Great Law was effective. So I started to cooperate with the Heavenly Demon Great Law again to practice that half of the sword technique, the demonic spirit slaying sword. Only then did I know that this was definitely the #1 technique in the entire heavens. The #1 sword technique. Its power was so great that it was unimaginable. Only then did I know that I had missed out on such a huge opportunity. But the Heavenly Demon Great Law was incomplete, and the demonic spirit slaying sword also only had the first half of the moves. However, the entire sword technique should have 18 moves. Moreover, only by using the complete Heavenly Demon Great Law to activate the complete demonic spirit slaying sword can one reach the supreme realm of slaughtering all living beings. Legend has it that when this technique is cultivated to a high level, one can slaughter all living beings in the world with just one strike. How I want to slaughter all living beings in this bastard's world. Chapter 13:17. After that, I came here countless times to search for it. But because I was in a daze at that time, I simply wandered around aimlessly and couldn't remember the exact location. Until now, several decades have passed and I actually still haven't found that strange cave entrance. When Yizue said this, the gray-robed man on the mountaintop sighed and murmured, I see. I was wondering why this fellow came once every 2 to 3 days. I see. After this fortuitous encounter, I kept it a secret and cultivated hard. Within 3 months, I became a sword emperor. During the clan competition, I appeared out of nowhere and killed the Grand Duke who had replaced me. At the same time, I defeated and killed my brothers of the same generation one by one. The 2 of them were from the same mother as me. I took back the position of Grand Duke. Yizue continued, his eyes gleaming with pleasure. Chu Yang sighed somewhat. Even though they were in the wrong in the past, they were your brothers after all. You killed them just like that? And you didn't feel guilty at all? It was only then that I realized that my temperament had actually changed along with the cultivation technique. I became cold and heartless. I became someone who viewed human lives as worthless. Every time I killed someone, I would always feel my blood boiling and incredibly excited. My cultivation improved faster and faster, but my temperament became colder and colder. When Yizue said this, he seemed to have touched the softness in his heart in the past. He actually sighed softly. Actually, back then, I was also a kind and honest person. Moreover, I had always been filled with leeway toward this life. I once thought of using my strength to make the clan rule the world, to protect my parents and brothers and sisters. It was as if I used my strength to help many people and let everyone spread my good name. I also once thought that after I succeeded in practicing the sword, I would start a family. I would have a beautiful wife and concubines and live in harmony. But ever since I practiced the demonic great technique and the demonic spirit slaying sword, I became colder and colder. No matter how beautiful a woman was, in my eyes, she was merely a body waiting to be killed by me. Other than practicing the sword, I didn't feel anything else. Other than the thrill of killing, I have no interest in anything else. I have never taken a wife until now. The women in this world only disgust me, but they don't make me like them. Furthermore, when I was being chased, I suffered many injuries and was in extreme pain. Countless strands of demonic energy actually appeared spontaneously, transforming my body and healing my injuries. However, as the demonic energy flowed out bit by bit, I can feel myself becoming more and more brutal. Yizue said rather painfully, back then, I also used to sing in the daytime. Drunk on a good night, handsome and young. The gentle scholar. The three sighed at the same time. One speaker, two listeners. One was in front of him, while the other was hidden in the dark. The two listeners had the same thought at the same time. This extraterrestrial demon is indeed terrifying. At the same time, a second thought came to his mind. So there is such a sword in this mountain. A demonic sword. Right at this moment, Yizue suddenly shuddered all over and jumped to his feet. He looked at Chu Yang as if he had seen a ghost. You bastard! What did you do to me? Chu Yang felt a little dizzy. He asked in confusion, what did I do to you? Suddenly, he became furious. What can I do to you? Yizue was flustered and exasperated. You bastard, you must have cast a demonic spell on me. He couldn't help but be flustered and exasperated. This was because he suddenly realized that he had actually revealed the biggest secret in his heart in great detail without even being aware of it. This was the absolute secret that he relied on to survive. Before this, apart from himself, no one else in the entire heavens knew about it. Chu Yang, you are indeed an extraterrestrial demon. I didn't expect you to have such a technique to bewitch people. Yizue's face was full of murderous intent. Chu Yang was confused and disoriented. Do you know what you are saying? Yizue sneered. Of course I know, but I know even more that you are an extraterrestrial demon. Today, I must get rid of this evil for the heavens. Chu Yang was confused right away. He was really confused. What the hell? What exactly is going on? I really didn't force you to say anything. Chu Yang, how dare you use such a despicable method on me? Hand over your life. Yizue shouted and drew his sword. All of a sudden, demonic energy surged. Chu Yang jumped up in a flurry, completely unaware of what was going on. Drawing his sword to block, he shouted angrily, what exactly is wrong with you? Yizue didn't answer, but his sword moves became fiercer and fiercer. His expression was ferocious, as if he couldn't wait to chop Chu Yang into pieces. Chu Yang retreated step by step, instinctively using the gentle water sword intent to ward off the other party's attacks. But now, for some reason, Yizue's cultivation had suddenly increased by a lot. In the battle just now, Chu Yang could still ward off his attacks, but now, he was actually powerless. Yizue's gaze became more and more ruthless. Chu Yang, you and I are irreconcilable. Chu Yang was really so wronged. Encountering such a lunatic was really something that would make anyone feel helpless. A moment ago, they were sitting together and having a heart-to-heart talk, talking about everything. The next moment, he drew his sword and killed without mercy. I really have to take my hat off to him. Take the first move of my demonic spirit-slaying sword. Heavenly demon descends. Yizue jumped up abruptly and fell straight down from the sky. A faint stream of demonic energy could already be clearly seen mixed in the sword light, slashing toward him at lightning speed. Wherever the sword momentum reached, Chu Yang's front, back, left, and right were actually sealed by the demonic energy at the same time. Chu Yang took a deep breath. Iron wall and copper wall were activated brazenly, and then firmament winds and clouds horizontally. There was a loud clang. Yizue's body swayed, and Chu Yang retreated 7 to 8 steps. Blood actually seeped out of the corners of his mouth. This bastard actually disregarded his injuries and was already able to exert the power of a third-grade sword supremacy. And he was still continuing to increase it. In that collision just now, if not for the fact that the tribulation sword technique was incomparably miraculous and far more exquisite than this demonic spirit-slaying sword, Chu Yang would almost have been rendered immobile by that sword move just now. Demonic spirit-slaying sword, second move. Heavenly demon spreads its wings. Demonic spirit-slaying sword, third move. Demonic slaughter blade. Fourth move, demonic blood. Fifth move. Chu Yang let out a strange cry and spat out blood. He turned and fled. As he retreated step by step, he had already reached a fork in the road. Chu Yang ran out in a panic. Motherfucker, this bastard has actually already advanced to the peak of 3rd grade sword supremacy. How am I supposed to withstand this? Where do you think you're going? Yizue's eyes were bloodshot. If I don't kill you today, I swear I'm not human. He gave chase closely. In front, Chu Yang fled extremely gloomily, his heart filled with endless sorrow. What exactly is going on? Of course, Minister Chu didn't know that Yizue had revealed his greatest secret because his divine sense had been controlled by someone just now. In a situation where Chu Yang didn't know anything, he had been passively taken advantage of. Now that the person controlling him had withdrawn his divine sense, how could Yizue not feel angry, worried, embarrassed and apprehensive when he saw that he had actually revealed his greatest secret to Chu Yang? Right now, he was already at the point where he wouldn't rest until he killed Chu Yang. On the mountaintop, the gray-robed man laughed so hard that he couldn't catch his breath. I'll let you take advantage of me. Today, I'll let you know that some advantages can't be taken so easily. The two of them, one chasing and the other fleeing, had already turned several rounds in an instant. The terrain here was unbelievably complicated, but Chu Yang fled in front while Yizue chased from behind. He actually didn't relax at all. Chu Yang understood at once. This guy comes here often and already knows the terrain of the few levels below like the back of his hand. If I continue to run down these few levels, I'm afraid he'll really catch up to me. The moment he thought of this, he stopped running down. When he reached the next fork in the road, he leaped and darted up the mountain path. Yizue gave chase furiously. Don't run. Hurry up and let me kill you. I'm going to swallow all your flesh and blood and see if I can convert the dragon essence. Chu Yang felt his hair stand on end. He cursed madly for being a pervert and ran even faster. In an instant, after passing through several maze-like intersections, Chu Yang had already darted up to the 5th level and hidden in the clouds. Yizue was still chasing after him, but the distance between them had already widened slightly. Finally, when he reached the 5th level, Chu Yang felt his body sink abruptly. The pressure on him suddenly increased by several hundred times. He forced himself to make a random turn and continuously quickened his pace. After making 7 to 8 turns and leaving Yizue behind, he finally heaved a long sigh of relief and leaned against the stone wall to rest for a while. Yizue's yelling and cursing was almost right in front of him, but he was running non-stop, searching for Chu Yang's figure. But Chu Yang was hiding not far away. He actually couldn't find him no matter how hard he tried. There's indeed something strange about this mountain. Chu Yang heaved a sigh of relief. He muttered inwardly, just keep running around here to look for me. It'll be best if you die of exhaustion. He hurriedly swallowed an incomplete version of the heavy pill and circulated his energy to heal his injuries. To his surprise, he discovered that wisps of black aura were being forced out from his hand. Demonic aura. Chu Yang couldn't help but be taken aback. When they were fighting in the forest, Yizue still couldn't force out the demonic aura, let alone use it to infect the human body. But now it had actually reached such a stage? Could it be that today's battle had actually given Yizue such a huge boost? Chu Yang felt more and more that this Yizue was definitely a disaster if he kept him alive. But now, there was really nothing he could do. Right now, he was still hiding from him, let alone killing him. How can I kill him? Chu Yang frowned, deep in thought. Right now, he had already changed his mind. It was already absolutely impossible for him to use Yizue to enter the Yi clan. Since that was the case, what was there to pity about killing him? You want to kill him? A soft voice actually rang out right next to Chu Yang's ear. Chu Yang could even feel the hot breath by his ear. A hand gently rested on his shoulder and even patted him on the shoulder. For a moment, Chu Yang felt as if his soul had left his body. A chill went down his spine and all the hair on his body stood on end. With a whoosh, he shot out. What the heck, who is it? Chapter 13:18. Chu Yang's whole body went limp at once. Oh my God, it's you. He sat on the ground with a thud, his whole body sweating profusely. Just now, he was really scared out of his wits. His heart almost jumped out of his throat. This person was actually a familiar face. A familiar face that he hadn't seen in a long time. Ning Tianya. Chu Yang was completely relieved. He was safe. He was finally safe. Why you here? Ning Tianya frowned and looked at Chu Yang from the corner of his eyes. What are you doing here? Chu Yang snorted and hurriedly started to treat his injuries. I haven't asked you yet. Why you here? Facing Ning Tianya was definitely much easier than facing Bu Luqing. In Chu Yang's opinion, Bu Luqing wasn't easy to talk to, but Ning Tianya wasn't. Besides, according to Jianghu, Ning Tianya was also the one who doted on his disciples the most. Of course I'm here for something. I have no choice but to come. Ning Tianya was very uncomfortable. Every time this little guy saw him, he wasn't very respectful. He was too casual. The last time in the northern wastelands, he was made a fool of by this guy. Of course I'm here for something too. I also have no choice but to come. Chu Yang rolled his eyes. After treating his injuries, Zhang Xian raised his head. Ning Tianya said angrily, Nonsense, if not for you, why would I be here? Chu Yang was surprised. Because of us? Ning Tianya sighed and said, It's because of you. Before the battle of slaying of the Tao that day, Ning Tianya was ambushed by the Dharma Supreme and Wu Jueqing and was seriously injured. He couldn't recover in a short time, so he had to find a place to hide secretly. However, when he stole the fortune, Ning Tianya also got a share of that huge fortune. With the help of the fortune, Ning Tianya got through the initial crisis and his injuries improved. The destructive power of the sword intent gradually disappeared from his body. Then the real recovery began. As the #1 expert in the world, Ning Tianya naturally knew where his injuries were the most beneficial. Therefore, he traveled day and night to the Pagoda Mountain. Although Ning Tianya didn't know what was going on, he knew for sure that it had something to do with the Tribulation Sword Master. Since the Tribulation Sword Master had done this, then, in Ning Tianya's heart, the crisis over there was naturally resolved. Therefore, he could only focus on recuperating. Anyway, Bu Luqing was taking care of his disciple. So, Ning Tianya was very relieved. A few months later, Ning Tianya, who had mostly recovered from his injuries, went out from the Pagoda Mountain. When he heard about Tu Dao, he was shocked on the spot. However, the real result and process of the battle against Tu Dao. However, no one knew about it. Ning Tianya made many inquiries, but he only knew that the second grandmasters of the 8 super clans and several hundred supreme martial artists had all died an unnatural death. As for the situation on Chu Yang's side, no one knew. After some time, it was said that Moon Breeze was still alive. However, there was no news of Bu Luqing ever since. Ning Tianya was so anxious that his injuries almost relapsed. He had no choice but to calm his heart and focus on recovering. He had only recovered for a few days, and was preparing to go out. As luck would have it, Chu Yang bumped into this place. It was only after hearing about Ning Tianya's encounter that Chu Yang found out that Ning Tianya had actually also participated in the battle outside Tianji City that day before the slaying of Dao battle. How are your injuries now? Chu Yang asked. Of course I'm fine now. Ning Tianya was rather smug. In terms of actual cultivation, Wu Jueqing is about the same as me. Besides, at our level, as long as he didn't personally plant the poison in my internal organs, it wouldn't affect me at all. It wouldn't harm me. Only that astral sword strike caused me to be greatly surprised. The next time I see Wu Jueqing, I'll definitely have to battle him again. Ning Tianya chuckled. I can't just let that bastard take advantage of me. Chu Yang's lips wriggled a few times, but he didn't say anything. Right, where's Bu Luqing? How is he? Where's Xiao? Ning Tianya asked excitedly. Outside. Yizue's roars and shouts came closer and further away again. Xiaowu is at my house now. She's very safe, Chu Yang said. Ning Tianya immediately felt that something was amiss. Where's old Bu? Chu Yang sighed. Elder Bu participated in the slaying of Dao battle. He was the main force there, fighting against Wu Jueqing, the Dharma Supreme, the second grandmasters of the 8 super clans, and more than 100 law enforcement officers and supreme martial artist experts of the 8 super clans. Ning Tianya's face turned ashen. With such a lineup, even if both he and Bu Luqing were to fall into it at the same time, there would be no chance of survival. In that case, could it be that Bu Luqing? What exactly happened? Ning Tianya growled. Supreme martial artist Bu. After that battle, he ascended to heaven. Chu Yang sighed. Huh. Ning Tianya was dumbstruck. Could it be? Xiao Wu's soul has actually dissipated? Otherwise, why can't I sense anything here? Chu Yang murmured. He just ascended to heaven, bastard. Ning Tianya's eyes reddened. Who killed him? He grabbed Chu Yang's collar and shook him fiercely. Even though I'm prohibited from participating in the Sword Master Heaven battle, I'll definitely slaughter the entire family of the person who harmed Xiaowu. Not even a chicken or a dog will be spared. Chu Yang was shaken so hard that his bones and muscles felt like they were going to break. Who said Bu Luqing was killed? Ning Tianya was stunned. You mean? Chu Yang rolled his eyes and said, he ascended to heaven. I didn't say that he was dead. Ning Tianya was dumbstruck again. What do you mean? Cough, he collapsed the sky and shattered the void. Chu Yang rubbed his shoulder. Ning Tianya was stunned for a while. Suddenly, his face turned red and he flew into a rage. He grabbed Chu Yang and said, Bastard! How dare you make fun of me? See if I don't arrange you into 3,000 different appearances. Chu Yang struggled and shouted, I didn't say that he was dead from the start. You said it yourself. Before he finished speaking, Ning Tianya smacked him heavily with his palm. Chu Yang screamed. He could clearly feel that his buttocks had split into 8 pieces. This was definitely not an adjective. It was really 8 pieces. Both buttocks were split into 4, and the muscles were completely staggered. Chu Yang's screams changed the pitch of his voice. You misunderstood. Who's to blame? It's a pity that I'm seriously injured. Ning Tianya ignored him and smacked him again. This time, the 8 pieces of buttocks were restored to 2 pieces. Then, with another smack, another 8 pieces of buttocks were split into different shapes. Smack, 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 smack. Chu Yang was hovering between life and death. His heart was already full of regret. Wouldn't it have been fine if I had honestly said everything in one breath? Why did I have to think that I was suddenly safe and even wanted to make a joke? Now I'm making a joke. Chu Yang shivered and finally remembered something. If you hit me again, I'll hit your disciple when I go back. Ning Tianya was stunned. He paused and suddenly flew into a rage. You actually dare to threaten me? My disciple's heart has already been stolen by you. She'll be your wife sooner or later. What does it have to do with me if you hit your own wife? Smack, 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 smack. It was getting heavier and heavier. Chu Yang was miserable beyond words. He struggled and shouted, Spare me, I won't. Before Senior Bu went to heaven, he left you a message. Chu Yang moaned. Ning Tianya stopped at once. What message? Right at this moment, Yizue's voice rang out. Chu Yang, hand over your life. Ning Tianya frowned. He grabbed the 2 pieces of meat on Chu Yang's buttocks and flew out with a whoosh. Chu Yang was extremely upset. He said discontentedly, wouldn't it be better to just kill him? How peaceful would that be? Kill him personally? Ning Tianya snorted. Then don't you think that he's too prestigious? Chu Yang really fainted at this sentence. In the blink of an eye, he was already in the area surrounded by clouds and mist. Chu Yang only felt that he was rising all the way, and slowly, he felt that the air also became cold. Below, Yizue's shouts could no longer be heard. Yizue searched frantically for a while before he gave up resentfully. He found his own way out and then sped all the way back to the clan. He must mobilize experts here. Firstly, to teach Zhuge Hun and the other bastards a good lesson. Secondly, to guard the way out of the Pagoda Mountain. No matter which direction that little brat came out, he must not be allowed to return alive. Yizue gritted his teeth. Chu Yang knew his biggest secret. If he actually walked out of the Pagoda Mountain alive, then, could his secret still be a secret? It was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't announce it to the whole world. Chu Yang was just a fake extraterrestrial demon, but he seemed to be much more authentic than him. At least he had received the inheritance. Yizue's figure disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. And at this moment, at the top of the pagoda mountain, Chu Yang was facing a serious interrogation. Quick, tell me, what did Bu Luqing say before he broke through the void? Ning Tianya was somewhat impatient. Chu Yang only felt that his buttocks were no longer 8 petals but had already become 17 to 18. He moaned. Supreme martial artist Bu laughed loudly and said, "What did he say?" Ning Tianya asked. Supreme martial artist Bu said, "Ning Tianya, you old bastard. You've been fighting with me for 14,000 years. You've been beaten up by me every time. You've been hung up on a tree to dry. I've beaten you to death every time. You're an old bastard, an old bastard." Chu Yang groaned and said viciously. Then he said, "Please believe me. Bu Luqing indeed said that." Ning Tianya's face was already pulled so hard that even his nose was crooked to one side. "I believe you. I believe you. Like hell I believe you." What followed was another round of torture. Chu Yang could no longer scream, but a ball of black gas finally came out of his mouth. He hurriedly begged for mercy. The demonic energy is really gone. It's been forced out, no need. Chapter 1319. Chu Yang, who was hovering between life and death, finally confessed. Earlier, Yi Zue's demonic aura had inadvertently invaded his body. As it was his first time coming into contact with it, Chu Yang immediately suffered a great loss. Although he managed to expel it in time, part of it still entered his internal organs. Under the sword spirit's efforts, on one hand, Chu Yang was really joking around to liven up the atmosphere. On the other hand, he used Ning Tianya's supreme divine might to draw into his body, and the sword spirit used it to successfully force the devil energy out of his body. At this point, he was completely relaxed. However, how could Ning Tianya's power be so easily borrowed? Although he clearly knew what Chu Yang was doing, and was also deliberately cooperating with Chu Yang to force out the devil energy, he was truly angry in his heart, and somewhat embarrassed. Fortunately, this old man has cultivated well and has strong willpower. Otherwise, wouldn't I have cried because of your little trick? If that's the case, how will this old man have the face to see others? Therefore, Supremacy Ning's fury was undeniable. Now that he knew that this little girl was fine, if Ning Tianya didn't torture her fiercely, when would he? "Are you going to confess or not?" Supremacy Ning asked imposingly. "I'll confess. Your Excellency, please don't hit me anymore. I'll confess. I'll confess everything." Minister Chu's face was covered in tears and snot. "Quickly confess." "Yes, sir. Could you please stop first?" "My butt hurts a lot." Ning Tianya suddenly felt like laughing. He gave him another fierce slap, and only then did he stop amidst a certain someone's blood-curdling screams that sounded like a pig being slaughtered. "Hurry up." At that time, Supreme Martial Artist Bu said, "When you see old Ning, tell him, I've fought for the title of #1 in the world for 14,000 years. Actually, I've long known that I'm not as good as him. But this time, I've won. I'll wait for him up there to settle the score with me." Finally, Chu Yang confessed everything. He recited the words that the Moon Breeze couple had said without missing a single word. "This bastard." A smile appeared on Ning Tianya's face. "Actually, I already knew that he would say that." Chu Yang rolled his eyes. "You already know this, what else do you need me to say? Do you have nothing better to do?" But of course, he didn't dare to say it out loud. He just rubbed his buttocks in grief. The more he rubbed, the more painful it became. He couldn't possibly eat an incomplete version of the heavy pill just because of this small injury on his buttocks, right? That would be too much of a wastrel. Ning Tianya sat at one side, a faint smile on his face. "Heaven Palace. Heaven Palace. Little Bu has gone up this time. You're going to suffer, yeah. Why?" Chu Yang asked curiously. "Above the heavenly imperial court. Our cultivation is too weak." Ning Tianya smiled. "Many years ago, I once went up there once. I went up once." Chu Yang opened his mouth wide. "Yes, I've been there once." Ning Tianya sighed. "That place is really good. The spiritual energy is abundant, and the environment is beautiful. Spirit herbs and spirit medicines are everywhere, but the number of experts there is also frighteningly high. After only 3 days, he was thrown down. He said that he wanted me to watch over the sky. Ning Tianya said with some nostalgia, I watched the Tribulation Sword Master succeed. The day the Sword Master succeeded. When I ascend to heaven. So that's how it is. Chu Yang suddenly realized. From what he could sense, Ning Tianya's cultivation should be much stronger than the others. However, in reality, they were on the same level. Chu Yang had long felt that something was off. So you suppressed your cultivation? Chu Yang asked. Not bad. If I were to release all of my cultivation, I would be able to do so. I probably shattered the void and left in an instant. Ning Tianya smiled. Touching his chin, he said, if Xiaobu knew about this, he would probably be very depressed. I'm depressed just listening to it. Chu Yang rolled his eyes. Since you're done talking about me, let's talk about you. I'm not done yet. How is Xiao? Ning Tianya persisted. Helplessly, Chu Yang had no choice but to give a detailed account of everyone's situation. Only then did Ning Tianya relax. You came to this pagoda mountain by chance. You finally reached a certain level of fate. Ning Tianya's voice became serious. I knew that you would definitely come, but I didn't know that you would come so early. And the earlier you come, the greater your fortune. Fortune? Chu Yang asked, puzzled. Fortune. Ning Tianya nodded affirmatively. Have you noticed that as long as you come from the north, you won't be able to see this pagoda mountain? But if you come from any direction other than the north, you'll be able to see it. Yes, I've noticed this problem. What's the reason? Chu Yang's biggest doubt was aroused at once. Ning Tianya smiled indifferently. The pagoda mountain. The pinnacle of yin and yang, overturning the earth with 5 layers. This is the pagoda mountain of the heavens continent. Chu Yang memorized it silently. This is the wonder of the pagoda mountain. The pagoda mountain is a combination of yin and yang. It hides countless secrets. And although this mountain doesn't look small on the surface, compared to other mountain ranges on the continent, it's still nothing. Those mountain ranges that span thousands of miles can be found everywhere on the continent. But when you really enter this pagoda mountain, you'll know that this mountain is far more than what it looks like on the surface. There's something else inside. And this is the first big secret of the pagoda mountain. The pagoda mountain is divided into different levels. The first and second levels are the foundation. From the third level onwards, every level is ever-changing. Even I can't figure it out. In fact, I've been on this mountain for so long, but I can't even figure out 1% of it. Thus, since ancient times, countless people have come to this pagoda mountain. Some people have come and left. However, there are too many people who have lost their way here. Even if they have the cultivation of a martial saint, they are still unable to leave. In the end, they starve to death here. Ning Tianya sighed softly. Even if a supreme martial artist can go without food for 3 months, or even 3 years, he still has to eat. Just by absorbing the spiritual energy of the universe can't feed a person. Compared to an ordinary person who gets lost, a supreme martial artist can only resist hunger for a little longer. Because this mountain can't be broken through by force. Even with my current cultivation, I can't destroy any stone on this mountain. When I fly, I can only fly into the clouds. I can't see any direction at all, and I can't fly out even if I want to. When Yi Qinshan came here for the first time, he couldn't get out for more than 2 months. No matter how he flew, he could only helplessly find that from beginning to end, he could only go in circles on the same spot. That's all. Chu Yang was astounded. It was just a mountain, but there were actually so many unfathomable mysteries? Ning Tianya said, every level of the pagoda mountain has another universe and another world. The pagoda mountain has one side of the netherworld and one side of the world of the living. This is the second great secret. In other words, if one comes from the north, he can't see it even if it's close at hand. Even if he's an ordinary person, he can still pass through the mountain if he bumps into it. But if one comes from the south, even a supreme martial artist, or even a second-grade supreme martial artist, has to climb step by step. The third great secret of the pagoda mountain is that it absorbs the spiritual energy of the universe day and night. The density of spiritual energy on the pagoda mountain is the highest among all the heavens. But ordinary people can only cultivate here for 3 years at most. After 3 years, no matter how unwilling you are, you can only come back 3 years later. And after I was injured, the moment I regained my mobility, I came here immediately. This is why. The founder of the Yi clan, Yiqinshan, has to come here to cultivate in seclusion for 3 years every 3 years. That's how it is. Logically speaking, after absorbing spiritual energy for hundreds of thousands of years, there should be countless heavenly treasures on this mountain. But in reality, no one has been able to find any effective herb on the pagoda mountain. Chu Yang was already in a daze. He really didn't expect a mere mountain to be filled with so many mysteries. And it's full of fortuitous encounters. But it's not something that ordinary people can have. Those without fortuitous encounters will immediately take a detour even if they're in front of a great fortuitous encounter. And Yi Zue was actually able to obtain the legacy of the heavenly demon from here. This is really a great surprise. However, the legacy of the heavenly demon doesn't belong to the pagoda mountain itself. So, there's a reason why Yi Zue could obtain it. The fourth great secret of the pagoda mountain. Every level has its own requirements. For example, Yi Zue just now, when I brought you to the 8th level, he could only leave. Because with his cultivation, he could only reach the 4th level. Law Enforcement Officer. Law Enforcement Officer Lang Ilang used to come here every 3 years. But that fellow is also an anomaly. Every time he came, he would come from the north. He would first pass through the mountain and then go to the Yi clan. Then, he would head north from the Yi clan, find this mountain, and enter here. Chu Yang felt a huge shock in his head. Law Enforcement Officer Lang Yilong. He came here every 3 years. His body swayed a little and he couldn't help but sit down on the ground. There were even a few cracks on his buttocks. The moment he sat down, he raised his head and howled miserably, but in his heart, he finally understood. At this moment, Chu Yang wished he could give himself 100 to 200 tight slaps across the face. I'm so stupid really. I only wanted to think of ways to sneak into the Yi clan. I didn't even think of searching for a place with dense purple crystals outside the Yi clan, a place with great fortune. After all that, it turned out to be here. No wonder Lang Ilang said that it wasn't something that could be found easily. Instead, it required a certain amount of fortuitous encounters before one could discover that place. So that was the case. The law enforcement interrogation hall was located in the north. He had to come from the north every time, so of course, he wouldn't be able to see it. He had to pass through it and go to the south before he could turn around and head here. Chu Yang sighed. A place with great fortune. This pagoda mountain was known to be the world's greatest secret. How could it not be a place with the greatest fortune? The night was bleak and cold. Who said that this place wasn't within the Yi clan's territory? As for the 3 sentences, purple chi comes from the east, the bright moon rises from the mountains. When heaven and earth shine together, he could just look at the moon himself at night. This was really a case of traveling far and wide in search of something, only to find it by sheer luck. Chu Yang almost wanted to howl at the sky to express the joy in his heart. Chapter 1320. Elder Ning, which level does Lang Ilang go to every time he comes? Chu Yang asked, his eyes shining. The 4th level? Why are you asking about this? Ning Tianya asked in surprise right after he finished answering. So it's the 4th level? Chu Yang chuckled. Which direction does he come from every time? Which direction does he go into seclusion? Ning Tianya rolled his eyes. How would I know? Chu Yang was stunned. Ning Tianya said, this is the 5th great secret of the pagoda mountain. Everyone who comes to the pagoda mountain and beyond the 3rd or 4th level basically doesn't take the same path. In other words, everyone has their own encounters. It's very difficult for others to find the path that others have taken. There may be a section of the path that's connected, but there will definitely be a section that's the most different. Therefore, this mountain is also called the Path of Life by people in a small circle. It's because everyone's path is different, and the pagoda mountain is just like that. Chu Yang's heart shook again. The path of life. That's right. The path of life. Everyone's path of life was different. Perhaps there was a section that many people would repeat, but after walking through this section, it would also be completely different. In the world, since ancient times, no two people's path of life was exactly the same. Was this pagoda mountain a sign of something? What was it hinting at? The more Chu Yang thought about it, the more he felt that this mountain was actually path of life. Many people had left, and each of them had taken a different path. There was definitely no repetition. Some people lost their way. Even if they were supreme martial artists, they could only die in the place where they lost their way. How many people lost their way on the path of life? How many people couldn't find the path that they wanted to take? The path that they should take in their entire lifetime? There were really too many of them. At the thought of this, Chu Yang sighed and said, "Those who can come to this mountain. They're all experts, right?" "Of course," replied Ning Tianya. "In that case, after these people came in, there must be many who died here, and very few who could get out safely, right?" Chu Yang asked again. "Not necessarily." Ning Tianya said, "Those who died here. Of course, there were quite a few, but there were even more who got out alive." Chu Yang asked, "Could it be that there were so many people who found their own paths?" A wry smile appeared on Ning Tianya's face. Since ancient times, no one had ever done it. Many people went out because they were confused the moment they entered and lost their way. But while they were confused, they lost their way, and just like that, they went out in a daze. They don't know how to get in, but they also don't know how to get out. Everything is muddle-headed, and they don't know what to do. Such a person. They make up the majority, Ning Tianya said with a wry smile. Chu Yang couldn't help but smile bitterly. This was really interesting. However, there were many such people in the world. The first generation was muddle-headed. He couldn't find his way. He rushed to the east and swayed to the west. Then he became completely confused. He did whatever he wanted and accepted his fate. Just like that, he reached the end of his life. The people who really died in there were all people with firm beliefs in life. They all had a kind of ruthlessness that wouldn't give up until they reached their goal. Therefore, they persevered and climbed up, moving toward their goal. However, they were too stubborn. They only cared about moving forward and neglected everything else. Therefore, by the time they realized that they really couldn't go up and wanted to retreat, it was already too late. Because they didn't leave a way out for themselves. Since ancient times, there haven't been many people who have been able to ascend and descend from this mountain in a clear manner. And these people were all extremely intelligent people, or very content with what they had. Take Yi Qinshan, for example. Every time he came to go into seclusion for 3 years, he would always go to the same place. After suffering the first time, he didn't go to other places at all. After 3 years, he left the same way he came. Those who can achieve success on this mountain are all people like this. Ning Tianya said. That's not right. Yi Zui isn't someone who is easily content. But he can still come and go as he pleases, said Chu Yang. Ning Tianya snorted. You can come and go as he pleases from the 4th level and below? Besides, his goal is always on that level, to find that sword. That sword is the highest goal in his life. With such a low goal, how can he get lost? After Ning Tianya finished speaking, Chu Yang suddenly looked thoughtful. He said slowly, in that case, it doesn't make sense. Like you said, because people like Yi Qinshan and Lang Ilang aren't greedy, they always go and return the same way they came every time. People like them are too easily content. Since they are easily satisfied, or rather, lack the ambition to reach the peak, doesn't that mean that people like them will never be able to reach the peak in their lives? Ning Tianya nodded and said approvingly, that's right. Chu Yang said, but you also said earlier that those who have clear goals and perseverance get lost one by one and starve to death. Didn't you say that those who have ambition, perseverance, goals and perseverance also don't end up well in the end? A sharp glint shone in Ning Tianya's eyes. He said slowly, you misunderstood my words. Absolutely. Chu Yang said, if that's the case, then what's the use of us working hard all our lives? Ning Tianya was silent for a moment. Then he said, "You're wrong. You still don't understand my words." This time, he didn't wait for Chu Yang to refute him. He continued, "What I said earlier was, they are too stubborn. They only care about moving forward and neglect everything else. Therefore, when they realize that they really can't go up and want to retreat, it's already too late." "Is that right?" Chu Yang thought for a moment. He said, "Yes, that's right. That's what I said." Ning Tianya got up slowly. He said, "Come with me. Let's go up." Chu Yang got up and followed behind Ning Tianya. He had just taken a step when his whole body suddenly felt as if it was struck by lightning. He felt a weight of 1,000,000,000,000 kilograms pressing down on him all of a sudden, so heavy that he couldn't breathe at all. With a thud, he sat down on the ground. Ning Tianya couldn't help but laugh. "I forgot that your current cultivation is still unable to withstand the heavy pressure on the 8th level of the pagoda mountain." He reached out and held Chu Yang's hand. With a gentle force, Chu Yang felt a warm force enter his body. Then he stood up. That terrifying feeling was no longer there. Ning Tianya held his hand and said dispassionately, "On the pagoda mountain, at the top of every level, one ascends to heaven with each step. How difficult is it to ascend to heaven? If it isn't difficult, how can one become a deity?" Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Following behind Ning Tianya, he walked forward. After walking for a few feet, he saw a fork in the road ahead where the clouds and mist were pervasive. Ning Tianya's footsteps were light. Pulling Chu Yang, he walked straight onto one of the paths. He turned a blind eye to the other forks in the road. After walking onto this path, Ning Tianya didn't look back. He kept walking forward until he reached the second fork. Then he walked in again without any hesitation. It was only when he reached the third fork that he stopped. "Let me ask you, how many paths were there at the first fork that we walked through?" asked Ning Tianya. Thoughts flashed through Chu Yang's mind. He said, "Of the 7 forks in the road, we chose one of them." Ning Tianya said, "Then what were the other paths like?" Chu Yang was flabbergasted. "I don't remember. How many paths were there at the second fork?" "It was still 7. No, it was 8. Was it the same as the first fork?" "It was different." "Where was the difference? Where was it different?" Chu Yang was stunned again. "Turn back and look," said Ning Tianya. Upon hearing that, Chu Yang turned back and saw that there was still a fork behind him. Standing among these small paths, Chu Yang actually couldn't distinguish which path he had taken to come here. "Which path did you take when you came here?" asked Ning Tianya. "This." Chu Yang tried hard to distinguish, but his memory was blurry and he couldn't remember at all. "If you want to go back and you're alone, which path would you take?" asked Ning Tianya again. Beads of sweat appeared on Chu Yang's forehead and dripped down. "Why aren't you saying anything? Have you forgotten your own path back?" asked Ning Tianya. "Don't you have a very clear goal? Aren't you very determined? Aren't you very ambitious to reach the peak? Why, you don't even know how you came here." Chu Yang was sweating all over. Ning Tianya's expression suddenly eased. "Do you understand now?" Chu Yang took a deep breath. "I'm still a little confused." But this time, Ning Tianya gave him an approving smile in response to his confusion and said, "Tell me about your doubts." Chu Yang said, "I can't say it. In short, I'm very confused and frustrated. I don't know what to feel. I don't know where to go or where to stop. This shows that you still don't have a goal and perseverance." Ning Tianya sighed. "Come, let's go back." This time, Ning Tianya took Chu Yang's hand and walked leisurely, as if he was taking a stroll in the park. He seemed to have found a random path and stepped into it. Then, he came out of the fork and entered the second fork again. When they reached the third fork, Chu Yang suddenly realized that they had returned to the place where the two of them were talking just now. "Sit down, still sit in your original seat. That's where I cultivate in seclusion. You won't feel the heavy pressure." Ning Tianya smiled with his eyes narrowed. Chu Yang sat down as he was told and said, "Please enlighten me, Elder Ning." Ning Tianya said somewhat mockingly, "This is the first time I've heard you speak so respectfully to me." Chu Yang smiled wryly, because she truly felt that she had touched a door but didn't know how to open it. But Ning Tianya had already seen through all of this. Just based on this point alone, Ning Tianya deserved her heartfelt respect. Chapter 1321. The Supreme Door to the Great Tao. Chu Yang was shaken by these words. But he unconsciously straightened his attitude even more. If even Ning Tianya said so, then it must be extraordinary. Unknowingly, Chu Yang also straightened his back. His ears perked up, fearing that he would miss out on a single word. Ning Tianya took in a long breath, and then exhaled a long breath. He sighed deeply and said, "This is something that I've only comprehended recently. But even though I've comprehended it, I myself no longer have any hope of reaching the peak. Isn't that extremely ironic and lamentable?" Ning Tianya's expression was extremely dejected as he sighed sadly. Chu Yang sat upright and didn't say anything. He just listened attentively. If this mountain is compared to life, then the path up the mountain is the path of life. There are too many forks in the path of life. Ning Tianya said slowly, "A fork in the road will hinder your progress and restrict your speed. However, a fork in the road can also increase your experience, teach you a lesson, and give you experience. There has never been a person who reached the peak without taking any forks in the path since birth. But for me, the forks that we are talking about now are not those forks. Instead, they are experiences. There are many precious things that one has to do and protect in life. Some forks are parents, sisters, brothers, true love, kinship, wives, children, and so on. If these are considered forks in the path of life that affect one's speed, then they are also the most precious forks. Take note, I am talking about the forks that affect one's speed. Only speed and not progress. Do you understand?" Chu Yang nodded. "I completely understand. Life wasn't about where one could go wherever one wanted to go. One didn't care about anything else. There would always be some things that would disturb one's state of mind and cause one to be lost when one was sprinting and setting off on a journey. For example, the instructions of one's parents, the tears of one's lover, all of these could make one's heart as hard as steel. Become soft in an instant." Ning Tianya said, "Many people have an extremely firm martial heart. You must know that when one's heart is firm to the extreme, all that's left is coldness. At this point, no matter what, no one can shake him. This kind of person is crazy about martial arts. He only saw his own goal, he only saw the peak of martial arts. He wanted to climb. So, he gave up everything around him and walked on this path. His eyes are always in front of him, so, whenever he walked past a fork in the road, he would not be distracted at all. He just walked over resolutely. He wouldn't care. At the fork in the road, are his relatives there? Are there people he cares about?" Ning Tianya said, "Therefore, this kind of person will become an expert. Become a powerhouse. He's like a sturdy saber that will continue to slash down until the saber shatters. Will the saber break? Because he's too hard." As Chu Yang listened, he seemed to have understood something. Being a person and practicing martial arts are one. If you can't even be a simple person, how can you talk about the peak of martial arts? Ning Tianya sighed. A person practices martial arts for the sake of protection, and not purely for the sake of becoming stronger. Become stronger? Just to kill people? In this world, there's no target you want to protect, no one you want to protect, and no one you want to work hard for. Therefore, even if you become a second-grade supreme martial artist, even if you surpass a second-grade supreme martial artist, in the end, you can defeat yourself without any enemies. Because at that time, you already have no reason to win. Even those martial arts maniacs cultivate for the same reason in the beginning, and that is to protect. There's definitely no one who says from a young age, "I want to become stronger, so I cultivate." Everyone is the same. Cultivation is to protect, and protection is affection. But as they walk, they forget about it. Digging one's own grave is the beginning. Ning Tianya said, "When I was young, I also had parents and family, and I also had a wife and children. I always thought that I treated my family very well, but my family members passed away one by one. But I regretted it because I could have done even better. If I had cultivated less and spent more time on my family members, I could have extended their lifespans to the point where I could no longer extend their lifespans. I wouldn't have regretted it then. But I didn't. At that time, I was more focused on quickly reaching the peak, laughing proudly in the martial world, and roaming the world. I did it, but when I was able to roam the martial world and roam the world, there was no one around me to cheer for me. Those who cheered for me were all people I didn't know, people who had nothing to do with me at all. Then what use was there for me to have such cheers? Chu Yang understood. Therefore, the real supreme door to the Great Tao is to be a good person first and then talk about other things. How to be a person? In front of your parents, be a good son. In front of your wife and concubines, be a good man. In front of your children, be a good father. In front of your friends, and in front of your enemies, you are the king of hell. Pay attention to these orders. The enemy is the last in line. Ning Tianya said, "Do you understand?" Chu Yang said profoundly, "I think I understand. You are only complete after you have done all these. You have a path of retreat. No matter where you go, you have roots. A tree can live if it has roots. A man can only go far if he has roots. Therefore, when you are advancing on the path of martial arts, you have to pay attention to the forks in the road around you and remember clearly. Then, when you are tired, you can retreat completely and return to your roots to recuperate. As you advance, you abandon your roots. If you can't retreat, you can only die alone on that path. Some people are so deeply in love with their wives that it will not fade even in death. They think that they have taken the path of sentiments. But is the path of sentiments only the feelings they have for their wives? Should they not have feelings for their parents, family members, daughters and grandchildren? Therefore, that is still the path of heartlessness. Therefore, in the end, it will still be destroyed. When Ning Tianya said this, Chu Yang's heart shook greatly. He thought of the elder master Chu Xiaoxin. Did Chu Xiaoxin have feelings? His feelings were as deep as the sea, unquestionable. But was he heartless? He was also heartless enough. Because for the sake of his wife, he had abandoned all other feelings. For the sake of past feelings, he had abandoned future feelings. In that case, Chu Xiaoxin also took the path of heartlessness? He thought of Lang Ilang and Wei Wian. The path of heartlessness. Chu Yang heaved a deep sigh. Therefore, the door to the Great Tao is to do what you can do and protect with all your strength, to make your heart complete and flawless. To be bright and beautiful, you will have the power to strive for any peak. Ning Tianya said heavily. Chu Yang said quietly, "But if I do all these, where will I have the time to cultivate?" Ning Tianya's eyes widened in surprise. How can there be no time? Don't you enjoy peace of mind when you are with your parents? Isn't this peace of mind cultivation? Don't you enjoy warmth when you are with your friends and brothers? Isn't this warmth also the cultivation of the mind? Don't you feel blissful when you are with your lovers? Isn't this bliss also the cultivation of the mind? And all these won't take up much time. Sometimes you just need to let them know where you are, and that will be enough. Your cultivation will also be enough. Why do people have 7 desires? Life is only when the 7 emotions are complete. Life is only when the Great Tao is complete, because there is a root. There are many forks in the path of the human heart. But these forks belong to different emotions. They all go hand in hand. If you insist on choosing one of them as the main path, that's fine too. But you can't ignore the others either. Otherwise, the further you go on the path of martial arts, the further you will be away from the taste of life. When you are so far away that you can't see it anymore and can't come back, that will be the moment you break down. You will be like a tree in a forest. With a root, there is a great Tao. This is the true path of emotions, which is also the true door to the Great Tao, the door to the heavenly Tao and the door to the immortal Tao. The path of emotions includes all emotions. If you do it, it will be the Great Tao. The reason why Chen Feng and Lu Yun can do whatever they want is because they have a root. They are each other's root. Even though tens of thousands of years have passed, they still managed to save Wu Jueqing when the tribulation nourished the heavens. They were even able to take care of their loved ones for tens of thousands of years. Therefore they have a clear conscience and their hearts are complete. Ning Tianya said solemnly, such a complete state of mind is a huge source of strength when facing the inner demons when challenging the great Tao. Since ancient times, how many experts have fallen to the inner demons not because they weren't strong enough, but because they were too strong. They faced the inner demons time and time again, all the way until the day they break down. They have no root. As long as Qin Feng and Lu Yun don't die, they will definitely be able to see the great Tao. That's it. Chu Yang sighed. The benevolent see benevolence, and the wise see wisdom in this matter. Chen Feng and Lu Yun might have done the best they could, but they ultimately didn't know the truth. Wu Jueqing was in an even worse state. Chu Yang thought again. If Wu Jueqing's physical body was destroyed in the tribulation nourishing the heavens and he really went to the extraterrestrial battlefield, would he be happy? What about their boss? Heaven's will is always playing tricks on people. Chu Yang, I will only tell you one thing. Don't underestimate the experience of the mortal world. Wherein the world isn't the mortal world. Even if you have the immortal Tao, even if you are the ruler of the imperial court, as long as your body and heart are not destroyed, you will still be in the mortal world. Ning Tianya sighed softly. As long as you still have regrets and guilt in your heart, you will never reach the peak of the great Tao. Even if you can go to the imperial court, it will be the same. Chapter 1322. Don't underestimate the experience of the mortal world. Chu Yang muttered to himself, as long as you still have regrets and guilt in your heart, you won't be able to reach the peak of the great Tao. Suddenly he smiled bitterly. Elder Ning, I understand. The strength of the heart is true strength. If the heart is flawless, it will be invincible. However, I have both regrets and guilt in my heart. What should I do? Ning Tianya looked at him in surprise and slowly frowned. Don't think that I'm joking with you. This thing that sounds so plain that anyone can understand is indeed the door to the great Tao. Only when you reach a certain level will you truly understand. The most reasonable thing in the world is actually by your side since you were young. Growing up and becoming stronger. It's just turning what you heard when you were young into your own experience. That's all. But things are still the same. Do you understand? I didn't think that you were joking. I also believe that what you're talking about is the door to the great Tao, the heavenly Tao. Chu Yang said seriously, this is the true path of emotions. I understand. Of course, Chu Yang understood. He had discussed the path of emotions with the sword spirit more than once. But no matter which time it was not as thorough as what Ning Tianya said now. The most obvious reason was often the truth. This sentence was verified once again here. However, the simplest reason was also the most difficult to achieve. This sentence was still being verified. Anyone could focus on martial arts, but to take care of all these was very difficult for anyone to do. To maintain a stable heart over a long period of time was as difficult as ascending to heaven. Because this was not 8 or 10 years. It was also not 1 or 200 years, but thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. Everyone says that to seek longevity. To reach the peak is to go against the ability that the heavens have given to the human body and to surpass it by force. It's an act that defies the heavens. Chu Yang took a breath and said, I used to think this way myself, clamoring to go against the heavens and to turn the world around. But now, I feel ashamed that I used to think this way and do this. There's no such thing as following or defying in the world. It doesn't matter if you follow or defy. The heavens are there and have never changed. What changes is only the human heart. When your heart is at peace, it's following the heavens. Your heart is impetuous, and you're going against the heavens' will. Chu Yang said slowly, that's all. Before this, when Ning Tianya was speaking, Chu Yang was listening. However, when Chu Yang said these words, Ning Tianya involuntarily straightened his back. He listened quietly. What has changed is only the human heart. This sentence. This made Ning Tianya very touched and he couldn't help but say, that's right, your heart is at ease. It was following the heavenly Tao. Your rebellious heart is going against the heavens. Actually, it doesn't matter if you're obedient or rebellious. When has the heavens ever cared? Yes. Chu Yang said, heaven is heaven. It has always been there and has never changed. Ning Tianya remained silent. So, Elder Ning, I understand everything now that you've explained it to me. Chu Yang couldn't stand up on this 8-story pagoda mountain. He just sat there and bowed to Ning Tianya. Many thanks. Ning Tianya accepted his bow with a solemn countenance. Then he similarly bowed and said solemnly, You're welcome. The heavens are the heavens, when have they ever cared about me? For this sentence, thank you very much. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. The difference between their cultivations was like heaven and earth. The difference between their ages was like heaven and earth. The difference between their statuses was like heaven and earth. However, in this lesson, a feeling of mutual appreciation arose inexplicably in their hearts. This feeling was as if the two of them were old friends of many years who were on the same level. Ning Tianya said, However, I still don't quite understand what you said earlier. When have you ever felt regret and guilt? He frowned and said, Do you know, I've seen so many heroes, but in tens of thousands of years, you're the only one who can achieve a perfect state of mind, be a good person, and ascend to the heavenly imperial court. Embark on the path of the great Tao. Although you've led a wandering life since you were a child, after returning to the clan, this knot in your heart has already been untied. You're filial to your parents, love and care for your family, and care for your brothers in every possible way. You've done everything that a man can do, so why would you still feel regret and guilt? Ning Tianya said, This shouldn't be the case. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. But what about women? What about women? Ning Tianya was stunned. You mean? Chu Yang took a long breath. Elder Ning, only you're here today, so I can open my heart and talk to you. Ning Tianya said solemnly, Please speak. Chu Yang frowned and thought for a long time. Then he said, Elder Ning, there's a kind of marriage called the previous life's marriage. Do you believe it? In other words, when you see a woman again, you'll inexplicably believe that this woman is your previous life's wife. That kind of feeling. I don't know if you understand. He couldn't talk about the secret of his rebirth. Perhaps this was the only way to explain it. Chu Yang sighed in his heart. Ning Tianya smiled. What's there to not understand? Although ordinary people don't agree with the theory of the soul, at our level we can be sure. Since there's such a feeling, it means that it's not bad. Chu Yang nodded slowly and said, Yes. Since Elder Ning understands, then it's much easier for me to say. At that time, I was in the lower 3 heavens, in charge of Butian Pavilion, against Golden Horse Riders Department. That year, I was 17.5 years old. Then, on that day, I saw Mo Qingwu for the first time. At that time, Mo Qingwu wasn't even 11 years old. Then, I had a vague feeling that Xiao Wu was the woman of my dreams. This was the first time Chu Yang had unreservedly bared his heart in front of another person, apart from the secret of his rebirth. Ning Tianya pondered and didn't say anything. He just nodded. At that time, I thought that when she grew up, I would marry her as my wife. Chu Yang said straightforwardly, I would only like her in my life. I would never be tempted by other women. In fact, I did it. I didn't accept any other woman. Until the end of the war. But things didn't go as I imagined. I thought that way and did that way. But there were always accidents. Chu Yang smiled bitterly and told him about Wu Qianqian and Tai Budian. Elder Ning, you don't know how uncomfortable I felt. Chu Yang took a breath. I also know that it's normal to have 3 wives and 4 concubines in this world. But the problem is that I want to give Qingwu a complete one, but I can't. I can't let go of Budian either. I can't let go of Qianqian now either. Chu Yang said, Now, when I face Mo Qingwu, I feel that I've let her down and the other 2 down. When I face the other 2, I feel the same. It's guilt and regret. Chu Yang said in a low voice, I once thought, if everything were to start all over again, what should I do? After thinking about it, I realized that I would still be in a dilemma. Furthermore, this feeling of guilt will continue. Even I don't know how to resolve it. This is your regret and guilt. Ning Tianya widened his eyes in disbelief. Chu Yang nodded dejectedly. I remember clearly that my original intention was to have Jianghu alone. But now, no matter which one I have to give up, I can't bear to. And so, I became conflicted. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Elder Ning, tell me, am I very despicable? Very despicable, but still want to build a monument to my chastity. But no matter how hard I try, I still want to build one. That feeling? Ning Tianya looked at him, somewhat stunned. Finally, he couldn't help but burst into laughter. It's actually such a thing? It's really strange. I just don't understand. Why are you so conflicted about this? Ning Tianya laughed heartily. Chu Yang was slightly angry. Is it very funny? It's very funny indeed. Ning Tianya held his stomach, looking like he was about to burst into tears. After a long while, he wiped the corners of his eyes and said, let me put it this way. From the general trend of the world. I remember that the Dharma Supreme once counted the population of the heavenly layer a few years ago. Now, the total population of the heavenly layer is about 35 billion. More than 27 billion of them are women. Chu Yang was stunned. Dumping corpses in the wilderness, vendettas in the martial world, large-scale wars, they are all dominated by men. On average, in the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of men will die in this heavenly layer, dying under swords and sabers. In such a situation, the upper three heavens and the upper three heavens are still a little worse. The lower three heavens are the worst. May I ask Grand Duke Chu, if each of these 8 billion men only wants one wife, and they all have the same mindset as you, then what will happen to the remaining 15 billion women? Will they all be bachelors? Chu Yang said in distress, these are two different things. All right, let's not talk about the general trend of the world, let's talk about the psychology of men. Men are like this. This is a common problem for men. It's very normal to like a few people at the same time. Ning Tianya said, however, if you talk about it yourself, that's another way of saying it. Let's not talk about it for now. He smiled and said, a man's heart cannot be divided. But he can do it. When he is with one person, he can treat her well wholeheartedly. When he is with another person, he can also treat her wholeheartedly. No. I can't do it. Chu Yang shook his head. He really couldn't do it. Chu Yang had tried before. When he was with Tai Budian, he had tried hard not to think of Imo Qingwu. But there would always be times when he would suddenly think of her, and then his heart would hurt as if it was being pricked by a needle. This time, Ning Tianya really laughed until tears came out of his eyes. Alright, I won't tease you anymore. I'll tell you the truth too. Ning Tianya held his stomach and said with great difficulty. Chu Yang looked at him with some resentment and anger. He suppressed the itching feeling in his fist. He really wanted to punch this old fellow's laughing face. To think that you even brought up a previous life's marriage. Ning Tianya was still smiling bitterly. A few days ago, Lord Shui came down and looked for me first. Then, he said that he was going to intercept you. Chu Yang was stunned for a moment. He looked at him in a daze, completely stunned. Lord Shui? Shui Leihan? To be continued. Chapter 1323. Ning Tianya had gone up before, but he was thrown down by someone who appointed him to watch over the heavens. The person who appointed Ning Tianya was actually Shui Leihan. Your rebirth is a reversal of the heavens' trajectory. The heavens' 35 billion people were reversed for you alone. It's not to make you regret and feel guilty. Ning Tianya's first sentence almost dispelled Chu Yang's doubts. As expected, you're still in charge of saving. Ning Tianya said, in this changed trajectory, you have to walk the right path, and you lack a few kinds of strength. Therefore, these strengths will be made up for from your women. You were too tough in your previous life, so Wu Qianxian gave you gentleness. You were too straightforward in your previous life, so Tai Budian gave you wisdom. You were heartless in your previous life, so Imo Qingwu made up for it in this life. Your path is too simple, so there's still a variable in your life. Ning Tianya said indifferently, but now, you've also found that variable. Therefore, Your regret and guilt are inevitable. But this won't become your inner demon, because they're all by your side. Although your regret and guilt will torture you, isn't this also how you behave as a man and a person in charge? You won't have such feelings at all. Then, it proves that you've never had true feelings for them. So, you can suffer as much as you want. You can suffer for this until the end of time, and no one will sympathize with you. Ning Tianya laughed loudly. Because you've already enjoyed all the blessings in the world alone. So what if it's a little painful? Chu Yang sighed sadly. You mean, this won't become a hindrance? Ning Tianya chuckled. Lord Swordmaster, you have too many concerns. Chu Yang said furiously, then why didn't you say so earlier? Shui Leihan, that old bastard. If he had told me to take them in, wouldn't I have? Sigh. Although he said that he was relieved. But Chu Yang knew that Ning Tianya's words hit him right in the heart. No matter what the reason was, it was impossible for him to not care. It was impossible for him not to feel guilty. But what was done could not be undone. Although Chu Yang felt guilty and regretful, although he felt that he was very beastly, he couldn't deny that there was also a kind of secret joy in his heart. Or was this the bad habit of men? Ning Tianya was on the 8th floor, mumbling to himself. No matter what your heart is, heaven is right there. Even if you call for the slaughter of the heavens will still be the heavens. Since ancient times, there have been many powerful beings who wanted to change the heavens and the earth. Now, the heavens are still the same, but those powerful beings are gone. He seemed to be immersed in some important juncture. Hearing Chu Yang's words, it caused a stir in his heart. It was as if a new realm was about to open before his eyes. Chu Yang had long been driven away. He was now on the 4th floor. After asking a few questions about Lang Ilang, Ning Tianya tossed him down impatiently. You're so interested. Why don't you just go and find where he went? Chu Yang had been here for 3 days now. He was extremely cautious. Every time he passed a fork in the road, he would carefully memorize it. Once he passed it, he would discover that it was not the right path. He immediately retraced his steps and went to the next fork. Ning Tianya knew that Lang Ilang had been here before. However, with his level of cultivation, he really had no interest in finding out where Lang Ilang had disappeared. Chu Yang searched for 3 days but still had no clue. But Chu Yang knew that the second tribulation sword fragment was here. His heart had already settled down. How would he dare to be the least bit careless? Where the purple aura comes from the east, the bright moon rises above the mountain pass. When heaven and earth shine together, the night is cold and desolate. Chu Yang's brows were tightly furrowed as he repeated these words over and over again. Sword spirit, do you sense anything? Asked Chu Yang. No. The sword spirit was rather dispirited. This pagoda mountain blocks all senses. I don't sense anything at all. Chu Yang sat on the top of the mountain, resting his cheeks on his hands. Sword spirit, do you feel that this pagoda mountain is a little strange? Strange? The sword spirit was rather puzzled. Chu Yang's eyes shone. Seemingly real yet illusory yet real. One's body is between heaven and earth, yet not between heaven and earth. Half of it is in the netherworld and the other half is in the Yang Pass. There are thousands of destinies hidden within the body, ethereal and ethereal, accommodating all living things, forming heaven and earth. The sword spirit's expression changed. Don't you feel that this is like a tribulation space? Asked Chu Yang faintly. Or rather, something similar to a tribulation space? Or perhaps, a treasure? The sword spirit shuddered. It's really hard to say. Anyway, I have a feeling that there's definitely something else inside. And it's definitely not a mountain. Chu Yang said with great confidence. Looking up at the endless mountain range, Chu Yang reached out and touched the stones on the ground. He said softly, it's too clean. Not even a speck of dust. The sword spirit suddenly felt a little creeped out. It was only after Chu Yang's reminder that the sword spirit realized. There really wasn't even a speck of dust on this pagoda mountain. This mountain, no matter what it was exposed to the elements and exposed to the elements every day, Yet there wasn't even a speck of dust on it? Wasn't this extremely strange? Chu Yang was right. Although the pagoda mountain was solid, nothing could be seen from the back. Even an ordinary person would be able to pass through it. However, from the south, it was a solid mountain. Even a pebble on the mountain wouldn't be able to be moved by a peak-grade supreme martial artist. Why was this so? The sword spirit suddenly felt a little confused. Could it really be like what Chu Yang said, that this wasn't a mountain but a magic treasure? But if it was a magic treasure, then with such great power, it would be a treasure that everyone in the heavenly imperial court would fight over. How could it be abandoned here without any care? The sword spirit was instantly confused. Sword spirit, how many directions have we found? Asked Chu Yang. 17, replied the sword spirit accurately. Okay, let's continue to find the 18th. Chu Yang smiled. Even if we find the 1800th one, I must also find the tribulation sword fragment. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days passed. In the wee hours of the morning, Chu Yang sat on a protruding rock on the peak of the 4th level in a daze. It should be here. Why wasn't it here? Chu Yang couldn't figure it out. He had practically gone through the entire 4th level, but he didn't find the cave that Yi Zue had entered back then, nor did he find the purple crystal cave that Lang Ilang had entered. However, these 2 items were indeed on the 4th level. There was no mistake about this. Chu Yang had already searched the south, east, and west sides. This was a normal thought process. They all entered from the south. Of course, they had to start searching from the south. Once they reached the north, wouldn't it be even more impossible to find them if they were trapped in that void? Heaven! From the morning of the 2nd day onwards, the experts of the Yi clan kept coming, slowly sealing off the exits of the pagoda mountain. By the next day, the number of Yi clan members had already increased to more than 1,000. Looking down from where Chu Yang was, he could clearly see people smaller than ants walking around at the foot of the mountain. But Chu Yang didn't care at all. He had a super bodyguard like Ning Tianya by his side. If Chu Yang still cared about these small fries, then he really didn't need to live anymore. Ning Tianya would also kill him with a slap. You're looking down on me too much. At the mention of Ning Tianya, he couldn't help but say, throughout this day, Ning Tianya had always been in the same place. He had maintained the same posture and hadn't moved at all. Chu Yang stood up rather helplessly. Looks like this side isn't here. It's not like it's here. East-south. West, east, south, west. I've searched all of them. I didn't miss anything at all. Then all that's left is the north, northwest, and northeast. Chu Yang muttered to himself, let's go. Chu Yang took a step forward. I'll go through all these sides first. Another 3 days passed. Even Chu Yang felt rather helpless. In the wee hours of this day, Chu Yang sat on this big rock that faced north. But he felt like he was sitting in the air. He couldn't feel anything under his butt. He couldn't see anything when he looked out. When he looked down, it was all clouds and mist. When he looked back, it was also a void. But he was still on this mountain. When he looked up, the sky was about to brighten. The moon hung in the sky in a semicircle. It was cold and desolate, giving people a feeling of loneliness. You can't see anything here. Of course, you won't find it, Chu Yang said to the sword spirit. But in the tribulation space, the sword spirit's eyes suddenly widened. The next moment, the sword spirit suddenly ran out of the tribulation space as if his butt was on fire. Chu Yang was startled. Hey, what's wrong with you? The sword spirit looked at the east, dumbfounded, and muttered, the sun is out. Purple clouds have appeared, Chu Yang said impatiently. What's so strange about that? It's like this every day. Suddenly, he turned his head abruptly. What? Every time I find the tribulation sword fragment, there will always be purple clouds. The sword spirit looked at the east and muttered. Chu Yang's heart shook, and he suddenly woke up from his dream. Suddenly, he stood up and looked around. In the west, a half-moon was hanging obliquely. In the east, however, there were thousands of purple clouds rising slowly. The sun was about to appear. Where the purple clouds came from the east, the bright moon came out of the mountains. Chu Yang's whole body trembled a little. He looked at the purple clouds in the sky without blinking. Then, he turned his head abruptly to look to the west. In the west, the clouds were drifting, and the shadows of the mountains and valleys were so clear. A waning moon was hanging on the peak of the mountain. It was as if this moon was slowly rising from the mountains and valleys. The next moment, a red sun jumped out of the eastern sky. Suddenly, the sky was filled with colorful clouds. At the same time, the bright moon seemed to be emitting its last light. There was also a cold light sprinkling on the world. Chu Yang stood at the top of the mountain and suddenly realized that a rare scene had appeared in this world. In the east, there were thousands of rays of light, and purple clouds filled the air. In the west, there was clear light everywhere, and it was peaceful. The east was warm and magnificent, and the west was quiet and peaceful. However, the east and west were indeed lit up at the same time. Heaven and earth were shining together. Chapter 1324. The hazy night sky above his head seemed to be slowly lifted by a huge hand, revealing the blue sky. The ground beneath his feet was also slowly dyed with the glow of the sunset, but Chu Yang suddenly realized that the place he was in was completely different. The sky above his head was already illuminated, and the ground beneath his feet was also covered in light. However, within the range of the mountain he was on, within a radius of several hundred feet, it was still deep in the night. It was as if he was in a different dimension from the sky and the ground. The sky and the ground were already illuminated, but it was still night here. Chu Yang's breathing quickened. Where the purple aura comes from the east, the bright moon rises from the mountain pass. When the sky and the ground are illuminated, the night is cold and desolate. The scenery depicted by these 4 lines of the poem finally appeared clearly in front of Chu Yang. There was absolutely no mistake. This was the place that Lang Yilong was talking about. The place where purple crystals were densely packed. The place where fortune was abundant. Everything matched. Chu Yang's hands trembled a little, but his eyes continued to observe everything coldly and sharply. He had a clear premonition. The answer to the riddle was about to appear. Finally, at the moment when the sun rose above the horizon, a ray of purple light shot over from the eastern horizon, and a ray of clear light came from the bright moon in the west. As soon as the clear light appeared in the horizon, the bright moon set behind the mountain and could no longer be seen. But this ray of clear light still stubbornly penetrated this misty night. At the same time, the purple light also penetrated domineeringly. The clear light and the purple light intersected 50 feet in front of Chu Yang. At the moment when the 2 rays of light collided, the light suddenly lit up. The point of intersection lit up, and the original void disappeared. The surrounding mountain rocks slowly appeared, flashing away. A passageway was revealed. Taking a deep breath, Chu Yang floated up like a feather and landed at this intersection. He slowly took 2 steps forward and entered this magical passageway. After the 2 rays of light led Chu Yang to a turn, they disappeared abruptly. Then Chu Yang realized that he was already facing the south. The night fog that filled the sky had disappeared. Everything around him, everything was visible. In front of him, there was a straight passageway that led to a dark cave entrance. The sword spirit exclaimed excitedly, "I can feel it. I can feel the aura of the 5th segment of the Tribulation Sword." In his dantian, the first 5 segments of the Tribulation Sword buzzed and trembled at the same time. Sword intent. It violently swam around the sword's body. At the entrance of the cave, a faint purple color was about to spurt out. Chu Yang could already smell the scent of a purple crystal mine. Yes, the inside of this cave was unbelievably rich. Purple crystal aura. This place was definitely a super purple crystal mine. Perhaps it wasn't a purple crystal mine at all, but an entire purple crystal. Pure purple crystal. Amethyst land. It contained the sharp aura of the Calamity Sword. It was as if it wanted to break through the pagoda mountain and fly out. The sword spirit urged, "Go in. Once you enter, you'll find the first section of the Calamity Sword." Chu Yang stopped at the entrance of the cave. He could feel the sword spirit's urgency. He could also feel the sword's desire. But now he stopped in his tracks. If I go in now, then I'll be able to obtain the Tribulation Sword fragment. If I can obtain the second section of the Calamity Sword, the heavenly layer and the lower 3 heavens will return to normal. The Lan clan would definitely send people to Iron Cloud to investigate. Then, is it because I went back quickly? Or was it the Lan clan that went down faster? It would definitely take some effort for me to obtain the Tribulation Sword. It could take half a day, or even 3 days. But the Lan clan was in the south of the continent. There was a passageway to the lower 3 heavens over there. They would be able to reach Iron Cloud within a day. I need to digest the Tribulation Sword fragment here, then break through the Yi clan's blockade and rush to the passageway, enter the passageway, return to the lower 3 heavens and rush to Iron Cloud. Will I be able to make it in time? With this calculation, Chu Yang felt that he was at least 3 days later than the Lan clan. But at this time, not to mention 3 days, even if it was 1 day, 2 hours, even if it was just a blink of an eye, it would cause an irreparable regret for the rest of his life. Although he had already increased Tai Butian's strength and arranged for Feng Qiliang, Chu Yang knew clearly that this bit of strength was not enough to go against the Lan clan. Chu Yang frowned and stopped. He stopped at the entrance of the cave beside the Tribulation Sword fragment that was within reach. And my brothers? It's already 3 days. There's no guarantee that no one will find out about our relationship. As long as there's even the slightest bit of suspicion, they're finished. Chu Yang frowned and looked up. He sent a telepathic message. Elder Ning, can you hear me? After a while, Ning Tianya's voice sounded. What's the matter? Can you come over here for a while? Chu Yang sent a telepathic message. After a while, Ning Tianya landed in the direction of Chu Yang's voice. Then he exclaimed, "What's going on?" Following the sound, he landed in a void. However, the moment he saw Chu Yang, everything in front of him became bright again. Everything returned to normal. It's just a wonder of heaven and earth. There's no way to explain it, Chu Yang said briefly. What's the matter? Ning Tianyan naturally knew that there were many things on this pagoda mountain that couldn't be explained with logic. He didn't dwell on it anymore. Why are you in such a hurry? Is the sky about to collapse? Chu Yang laughed and said, That's right. To me, the sky is about to collapse. Ning Tianya was startled. Oh! Elder Ning, take a look at this cave entrance. Chu Yang pointed. Yes, I didn't find it before. Ning Tianya nodded. Then he was shocked. Is this the cave where Yizue got the legacy of the extraterrestrial demon? No. Chu Yang said seriously, This is where I want to get the legacy. Ning Tianya wasn't stupid. He exclaimed, You're saying that the Tribulation Sword is inside? Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Not only is there the Tribulation Sword, but it's also an important part. Verse 1, this verse. As long as I get it, I can immediately lead to the passage of all the heavens. Ning Tianya's expression turned serious. I see. But I'm very worried about this passage, Chu Yang said. I have brothers in the lower 3 heavens and lovers in the lower 3 heavens. And the Lan clan. They seem to have confirmed the identity of the Tribulation Sword Master. Although they can't be sure that it's me. But they know that the Emperor of the lower 3 heavens is the Tribulation Sword Master's woman. Ning Tianya was horrified. How can you be so careless? Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Back then, who would have thought that something like this would happen? Back then, he only gave Tai Butian a life-saving item. Who would have thought that it would have such a huge impact? Therefore, the Lan clan had already arranged for a few supreme martial artists to wait in Iron Cloud along with the Grand Duke of the Lan clan, Lan Ru. Chu Yang said, But the last time I went down, I killed all of them. Ning Tianya's eyes widened. Killed all of them? They went down to become one of the tribulations. To maintain the glory of 10,000 years. And you killed all of them? Yes, I killed all of them. Chu Yang spread out his hands. So when the passage opens this time, the Lan clan will definitely go down to Iron Cloud immediately. He said seriously, I'm worried about the safety there. Ning Tianya finally understood. You're saying that you want me to go over and protect them? Or rather, stop the Lan clan? Chu Yang said, "If Elder Ning is willing, of course I hope that you can go over personally." He said seriously, "Protect them." Ning Tianya heaved a long sigh. "Ever since I met you in the northern wastelands of the upper three heavens, I've never felt comfortable. Now, I've actually become your hired thug. I even have to travel so far to the heavens. I originally wanted to go and see my disciple first," said Ning Tianya. Then he suddenly froze. Chu Yang didn't notice. He said, "Actually, I'm also very embarrassed. But if Elder Ning is willing to help this time, I'll definitely be very grateful." "Who cares about your gratitude?" Ning Tianya looked like he was going to agree, but he suddenly became ferocious. "I'm not going." Chu Yang was dumbfounded. What was going on with this old guy? Ning Tianya said angrily, "I only realized now. That day, you kept saying that you felt guilty. So it was actually because of my disciple. You have my disciple. And you're actually thinking of having multiple wives?" Chu Yang was dizzy. How many days had it been? So this old guy didn't realize it back then? This wasn't right. The veins on Ning Tianya's forehead popped out. He flew into a rage. "Back then, I only remembered Lord Shue's instructions. A new solution for you. But I didn't expect you to be such a beast, having designs on my poor disciple. You were too tough in your previous life, so Wu Qianqian gave you gentleness. You were too straightforward in your previous life, so Tai Butian gave you wisdom. You were heartless in your previous life, so Emo Qinggu made it up to you in this life." Chu Yang recited a passage and said, "Elder Ning, you're not crazy, right? Didn't you tell me this passage?" Ning Tianya said angrily, "That was what Lord Shui said. I'm just repeating it." Cough. "I've only found out about these bullshit things recently." At the same time, Ning Tianya was also puzzled. When he was repeating Shui Leihan's words and the solution for Chu Yang's life, Ning Tianya realized that he actually didn't have any emotional fluctuations. Even at that time, during that whole period of time, his emotions were very calm. He actually didn't realize at all that the Emo Qinggu in the story was his one and only younger brother whom he doted on the most. It was only now that he heard Chu Yang mention the old story again that he suddenly realized. Chu Yang sighed deeply. "I deeply admire your ability to react." How much time has passed since then? Ning Tianya was equally speechless. Regarding this matter, he was also confused. He only said angrily, "You actually want me to protect little Wu's love rival?" Chu Yang rolled his eyes. "Don't you think you're being unreasonable?" Ning Tianya snorted heavily, still feeling uncomfortable. He said, "If I leave, what will you do? These little bastards from the Yi clan down there are all coming for you." Chu Yang frowned. "It won't take much effort to clean them up before you leave, right? I'm not asking you to kill them all. You can beat them until they can't move. I can go down and kill them myself later." Minister Chu was planning to drag him down to the end. It would be a waste not to use such a top fighter in the world. Perhaps because my mood was affected, I was especially slow in writing today. I only finished the 4th chapter after 3 hours. It's 2:50 in the morning now. I'll continue writing the 5th chapter. To be continued. Chapter 1325. Filled with frustration, Ning Tianya let out a long howl and flew out in a flash. Along the way, his howl became more and more frustrated, louder and louder as he sped down the mountain. He didn't want to stay by Chu Yang's side for even a moment longer. Seeing this fellow's face made him want to punch him. Yi Zue paced back and forth in front of the team, his face full of murderous intent. After waiting for 5 consecutive days, Chu Yang still hadn't come down from above. Yi Zue became angrier and angrier. "Did you find anything?" Yi Zue asked a Yi clan expert who was rushing over from another direction. "No. I've already scouted out all the north, south, east, and west. There's definitely no such person passing by. I can guarantee it. He must still be on this mountain." Yi Zue snorted. "It's good that he's still on this mountain. This time, no matter what, I must kill him." He recalled how when he returned to the clan to chase after Zhuge Han, He discovered that Zhuge Han had actually sped all the way and was about to leave the Yi clan territory. He couldn't catch up to him. Yi Zue was frustrated. He didn't expect Zhuge Han to be so decisive. When he couldn't hit him, he immediately retreated and fled far away. If the Zhuge clan couldn't catch him, the Lan clan naturally couldn't either. The only one who could let him vent his anger was Chu Yang. Therefore, in these few days, Yi Zue had gathered all the forces he could mobilize here. No matter the cost, he must kill Chu Yang. If not for the fact that the people who had rushed to the northwest had already gone too far, he even wanted to capture those experts and intercept them to take part in this encirclement, all for the sake of killing Chu Yang. Now, Chu Yang's importance in his heart was listed as the number one must-kill, far above the Tribulation Sword Master. Currently, the Yi clan experts gathered at the foot of the Pagoda Mountain. The number had already reached a terrifying level. Yi Zue clenched his teeth, a fire burning in his heart. If he didn't kill Chu Yang, he wouldn't be able to sleep or eat in peace. Unintentionally revealing his biggest secret had already become a nightmare that Yi Zue couldn't get rid of. No matter what, he had to kill Chu Yang to be at ease. He was afraid that one day he would wake up. Suddenly, someone pointed at him and said, "He is the extraterrestrial demon. He is the real extraterrestrial demon." How did he become a fourth-grade sword supremacy so quickly? Extraterrestrial demon technique. The art of extraterrestrial demons. If you don't believe me, you'll know in a battle. If so, this was Yi Zue's true nightmare. In fact, for the past few days, he would even dream that he was being hunted down by the entire world. Falling off a cliff, yet never reaching the bottom. That kind of terrifying feeling of falling. This made Yi Zue tremble all over. Then, he woke up from his dream with a start, his entire body covered in cold sweat. Keep an eye on him. Even a mosquito is not allowed to fly out of the Pagoda Mountain. Yi Zue roared savagely, no matter what. He also wanted to destroy the extraterrestrial demon Chu Yang here. Tear him to pieces. If anyone makes a mistake, take your own head as an apology. His entire family would be executed. All 3 clans will be exterminated. Now, everyone open your eyes wide. Yi Zue was calling out. Unknowingly, his eyes were already filled with black gas. However, the Yi clan members in front of him were all lowering their heads, not daring to raise their heads. Sensing the Archduke's murderous aura, as well as his violent rage that threatened to destroy everything, no one dared to raise their heads and refute him. At this moment, a long howl suddenly sounded from the Pagoda Mountain. "He's coming down!" Yi Zue was overjoyed and let out a wild cry. Everyone raised their heads in unison, their murderous aura filling the air. It's this small matter that caused so many of us to be lectured here. You've finally come down. If we don't torture you to death, we'll really be letting down all the hard work and suffocation we've endured these few days. But in the next moment, everyone was shocked and then horrified. When the long howl first sounded, it should have been at the top of the mountain. But at this moment, they were already halfway up the mountain. The howl became more and more majestic, as though all the living beings in the world were shouting toward the sky in unison at this moment. It rumbled and turned into violent heavenly thunder, striking down violently with golden lightning. Rumble, the howl was still going on, but the surrounding mountains and valleys were already filled with dust and dirt, shooting up into the sky. The might of the howl shook everything within 10,000 miles. The earth trembled so much that everyone couldn't stand still. Some even swayed left and right, and a few of those with lower cultivation had already fallen to the ground from the tremors. Yet they were still bouncing up time and time again as the earth trembled. Extreme horror appeared in Yi Zue's eyes. He asked repeatedly, "Who is this person? Who is this person?" The Yi clan members were all dizzy and didn't have the time to answer his question at this moment. A few of them had participated in the siege of Wujueching in the Yi clan courtyard back then. At this moment, they instinctively felt that something was amiss. Could it be that Yi Zue has kicked an iron plate again this time? But, judging from the momentum of the iron plate this time, it seems to be even more serious than the previous one. The howl had already reached the top of their heads. Within 1,000 miles, dust and dirt rose into the air and gathered into a huge mushroom cloud, surging and rolling toward the blue sky. Suddenly, the howl was followed by a series of popping sounds. Yizue couldn't stand still. To his horror, he saw the experts he had set up at the various entrances of the pagoda mountain landing in front of him one after another. They slowly piled up into a pile. As the howl ended, a gray-robed man slowly descended with his hands behind his back. Landing in front of the dozen or so people, he asked with some anger, "So it's you guys who have disturbed this old man's peaceful cultivation? What punishment do you deserve?" Yizue was shocked. He hurriedly explained, "Elder, please calm down. We are..." "Shut up." The gray-robed man shouted domineeringly. "Yi clan members?" He actually didn't listen to any of Yizue's explanations. Yizue nodded repeatedly, his heart filled with extreme fear. He hoped that this person wouldn't be too ruthless on account of his clan. "I was wondering who had such guts. To think it's actually the Yi clan members." The gray-robed man snorted. His hands flashed repeatedly. The remaining dozen or so people were picked up by him like chickens and thrown into the pile of people. The last slap. With a loud smack, it landed on Yizue's face. Yizue was hit so hard that one of his feet was lifted off the ground. The tip of one of his feet was on the ground, and he spun about 70 to 80 rounds like a top. Stars appeared before his eyes. "Little demon!" The gray-robed man snorted. He scolded softly. Yizue's entire body turned cold at once. His mind was in a mess. He also knows my secret. That's right, I told him on the mountain. With this person's cultivation, how could he not have heard it? More than 100 Yi clan experts of martial saint level and above were piled together like this. Every one of them was vomiting blood and had lost their ability to fight. Even now, everyone's ears were still ringing. Some of them had even started to bleed from their ears. Yizue lowered his head in fear and trepidation. A hint of extreme viciousness flashed across his eyes. "When my heavenly demon great technique is fully mastered, I will crush you to death with one hand," the gray-robed man snorted. Suddenly, he raised his voice and shouted, "Yi Chinjin, come to the pagoda mountain." His voice traveled out, neither fast nor slow, neither angry nor angry. In the Yi clan courtyard hundreds of miles away, a thunderous roar suddenly rang out. "Yi Chinjin, come to the pagoda mountain." Thud. The Yi clan's walls had already been shattered into pieces by Wu Jueqing the last time. This time, they collapsed with a loud crash. Yi Chinchen, who was cultivating in the quiet room, was jolted awake. "What happened?" "I don't know. Who told me to go to the pagoda mountain?" Yi Chinchen made a prompt decision and flew out. He could clearly sense that the person who was shouting, his cultivation was far above his. Since he asked him to go to the pagoda mountain like this, there must be a reason. A figure flashed. Yi Chinchen appeared on the roof. The next moment there was another flash. He had already disappeared into the land of morning light. In front of the pagoda mountain, Ning Tianya stood with his hands behind his back. Behind him was a trembling Yizue and a pile of Yi clan experts. Yizue's demonic aura was completely sealed by Ning Tianya's slap. At this moment he was truly powerless. Not long after, a rustling sound rang out in the distance. It sounded like a hurricane sweeping through the forest. It was very hard to believe that this was actually the sound of a person flying. A figure suddenly fell from the sky like a shooting star. With a slight shake of his body, he had already eliminated the terrifying inertia of moving at high speed. He stood on the spot and took in the situation. His expression couldn't help but change. "Elder Ning, so it's you. How could Yi Chinchen not recognize the #1 expert in the world, Ning Tianya?" The moment he saw that it was actually him, his heart thumped wildly. The previous time, he had provoked Wu Jueqing. Could it be that he had provoked Ning Tianya again this time? At the thought of this, Yi Chinchen felt a toothache at once. Judging from the situation before him, this might really be the case? "I say, little Yi, what's wrong with you?" Ning Tianya struck first to gain the upper hand. Acting as the guilty party, he first tried to claim the right. How can you do this? I was cultivating at the pagoda mountain for a while. You actually instructed your grandson to come and make trouble. What are your intentions? Yi Qinshin's expression darkened at once. This bunch of bastards came out to make trouble, and they actually used my name? What's wrong with you? Ning Tianya said furiously, do you think I'm easy to bully? Yi Qinshin smiled bitterly. If you're easy to bully, then there really isn't anyone in the world who isn't easy to bully, he said helplessly. Elder Ning, please calm down. Let me investigate this matter. There must be a misunderstanding. Ning Tianya snorted angrily. What misunderstanding? The truth is that while I was cultivating on the mountain, your grandson was at the foot of the mountain scolding and hollering. This is simply unbelievable to me. Yi Qinshin, when did the Yi clan become so ill-mannered? Yi Qinshin's face was full of shame. It was also out of anger and embarrassment. Do you think it's easy for me? I'm already more than 10,000 years old. I can be considered to be a person of virtue and prestige. Now, within a month, I've been reprimanded twice like a child. The first time was still manageable. That was because Wu Jueqing had been provoked into the house. Those who didn't know about it weren't to be blamed. But after that, he had given strict orders not to stir up any more trouble. Now, it hadn't even been half a month yet, but he was dragged over by Ning Tianya again and fiercely reprimanded. Who did I offend? Yi Qinshin was practically driven mad by these grandchildren of his. His whole body was trembling, and his limbs were icy cold. Cough, it's 5:30 a.m. I'll continue to write my first update. Approximately at 8 o'clock a.m. Gee, I can hold on. Can you all take it? Gee, I'm asking for monthly votes. Let's see how much I can increase before the first update comes out. Haha, and gee, to be continued. Chapter 1326. Looks like it's really time for the Yi clan to be overhauled. Yi Qinshin secretly made up his mind. Make all of them scram. I say, little Yi, if I hear such a voice again when I'm cultivating, don't blame me for not giving you any face, Ning Tianya said in an old-fashioned manner. Yi Qinshin said sullenly. He turned his head fiercely and shouted while suppressing his anger, get lost. I'll settle the score with all of you when we get home. Not only did he want to settle the score, Yi Qinshin even had the heart to swallow these people alive right now. He was infinitely sullen. I'm already so old. Can all of you? Can you not embarrass me like this? Ah. He went forward and gave each of them a heavy slap, allowing them to regain some mobility. Then, Yi Qinshin kicked Yi Zue's buttocks. Get lost. If you dare to come to the foot of the pagoda mountain again, I'll cripple you. Yi Zue led his men and fled in a sorry state. Elder Ning, thank you for showing mercy. If there's nothing else, I'll be going home. Yi Qinshin cupped his hands. He had already made up his mind. Almost 1,000 years ago, he had stopped interfering in family matters. Now, it looked like there was really a need to clean things up. This Yi clan, this kind of clan, had already made him feel like a stranger. Slow down. I still have to remind you of something. Ning Tianya looked at him solemnly, his gaze cold. Little Yi, this great-grandson of yours, this first successor of the Yi clan, don't you feel very abnormal? Yi Qinshin couldn't make head or tail of it. Abnormal? Ning Tianya said solemnly. He's cultivating a demonic art. Demonic art? What demonic art? Yi Qinshin muttered, somewhat perplexed. Suddenly, his expression changed drastically. Elder Ning, you mean? Ning Tianya nodded lightly. It's exactly what you guessed. You can go back and verify it yourself. For your father's sake, I'll give you some advice this time. Yi Qinshin was completely drenched in cold sweat in an instant. He bowed deeply. He said sincerely and even with some lingering fear, Thank you, Elder Ning. He couldn't not thank him. If Ning Tianya hadn't told him about this but someone else, Yi Qinshin was sure that within a month's time, the Yi clan's name would be completely removed from the continent. Demonic arts. This was a much greater threat than the Tribulation Sword Master. Ordinary people might not know about demonic techniques, But how could those who had reached the 7th or 8th grade of Supreme Martial Artist and were qualified to participate in the secrets not know about it? The law enforcement officers. How could the Dharma Supreme and the others not know? With a solemn expression, Yi Qinshan flew away. Ning Tianya also heaved a sigh of relief. The members of the Yi clan would definitely not dare to come to the Pagoda Mountain again. Yi Qinshan would also keep a close eye on Yi Zui. There shouldn't be any problems on Chu Yang's side. Then I'll prepare to go to the lower 3 heavens next. He turned around to take a look. Ning Tianya murmured, "The tribulation is coming soon." Chu Yang, don't mistreat my disciple. His body flashed, and he suddenly disappeared without a trace. Chu Yang had already entered the cave. From the outside, this cave looked very shallow, as if one could see the end of it at a glance. But after walking in, however, he found that the cave was unexpectedly long. It was as if there was no end in sight. Chu Yang was surprised to see that there was a bend in the road. Around the bend, there was a jade pendant on top of a piece of paper. Entered this cave by mistake. Disheartened, the only thing left is to live in seclusion. My lover is in trouble. Wronged, I have the intention to kill the culprit, but am powerless to reverse the situation. A sorrowful man. Forget it, forget it. I'll just end my days in this cave. Although Chu Yang didn't recognize this handwriting, he understood when he saw these words. This must have been left behind by Lang Ilang when he first entered this cave. For some reason, he didn't take it away but left it here all along. Chu Yang thought about it. If he were Lang Ilang, he probably wouldn't take it away either. Leaving it here would serve as a witness and remind him of the direction in which he should work hard. With a sigh, Chu Yang exerted force, and both the jade pendant and the piece of paper turned into dust at the same time. Your debts are settled. Then, let's get rid of this obsession. As he continued to walk in, the aura of purple crystals became stronger and stronger. A full 2 hours later, after turning the last bend, Chu Yang was suddenly shocked. The sudden flash of purple crystals almost hurt his eyes. As far as his eyes could see, it was a world of purple crystals. There was a huge cave inside, and it was completely formed by a huge piece of purple crystal. The cave was filled with dazzling purple light. And this was just the entrance to the purple crystal cave. About 20 feet inside the cave, there was a clear mark, as if someone had been working here for a long time. The purple crystals on the ground had already become somewhat smooth. Presumably, the purple crystal hand that Lang Ilang cultivated must be here. The tribulation sword was trembling, urging Chu Yang to walk in. Chu Yang walked in. After walking several hundred feet, he felt as if there was some kind of barrier in front of him that prevented people from entering. A ball of purple light shone brightly and condensed into a substance, sealing the cave entrance from here. Chu Yang walked forward and reached out to push it. However, he felt as if his hand had sunk into a sticky substance. A force surged toward him. Chu Yang mustered all his strength, but was still pushed back by this sticky force. He was pushed back 100 feet. This place was indeed not a place where ordinary people could enter. Chu Yang was not alarmed at being pushed back. Instead, he was overjoyed. With a wave of his hand, a small sword slowly formed in his palm. A clear sword hum suddenly rang out. The tribulation sword was already in his hand. The true form of the tribulation sword. Chu Yang walked forward slowly. The tip of the tribulation sword slowly pierced into this sticky substance. The entire sword suddenly lit up. It was as if wisps of some inexplicable substance had entered the sword. From the tribulation sword, wisps of something also surged out and entered this fog. It was as if two old friends who had not seen each other for a long time were greeting each other warmly. Have you eaten? I have. Have you eaten? Me too. That's great. We've all eaten. At least, that was the strange feeling that Chu Yang had right now. Then, after this greeting, that translucent purple mist suddenly disappeared. It was like a door that was originally tightly shut. After two extremely nonsensical and meaningless exchanges, it suddenly opened. Please enter. Even Chu Yang felt a strong sense of absurdity. The tribulation sword was already flying forward. Chu Yang followed closely behind. After entering, Chu Yang suddenly realized that the cave walls here had turned into purple crystal cores. One by one, the purple crystal cores were densely arranged side by side and embedded together to form a hole, forming a cave. Chu Yang was amazed. He walked forward step by step. After several hundred feet, it turned into a whole field of purple crystal jade essence. The purple crystal jade essence was several hundred feet long and extended into the cave. He walked forward further. As expected, it was indeed the soul of the purple crystal. The sword spirit was still leading the way in front happily. Chu Yang felt a sense of absurdity. Could there also be holy crystals and divine crystals here? But the tribulation sword stopped at the root of the soul of the purple crystal. Chu Yang walked over slowly. In the depths of the cave, there was a strange flower. It was a flower completely formed by the aura of the purple crystal. But on the stamen, there was something quietly supporting it. A sword hilt. This sword hilt lay quietly on the stamen, motionless. But it had an aura as if everything was in control. But it spread out. It spread out very calmly and steadily. The first 5 segments of the tribulation sword started to vibrate excitedly. The sword intent left the sword body and shuttled back and forth in the air excitedly. In the space of consciousness. The sword spirit said with some surprise, "So it's this time." The first segment of the tribulation sword is the sword hilt. Chu Yang said solemnly, "Looks like it is." But he recalled the words in the general principles of the tribulation sword. The sword hilt of the tribulation sword. The part of the sword that was held by the hand was the source of all the attacks that controlled the entire sword. The sword hilt of the tribulation sword was divided into 2 sides, yin and yang. Chu Yang looked over and saw that although this sword hilt looked the same color, one side was a little bright while the other side was a little dark. Of course, if it was held in the hand, nothing could be seen. The first 5 segments of the sword started to clamor at the same time. The sword hilt slowly rose from the misty flower. The movement was slow, but it gave off an extremely calm and confident feeling. The next moment, the sword tip, sword blade, sword edge, sword guard and sword tongue all rushed up at the same time. Crack, 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 crack. They all returned to their positions. After a series of dazzling flashes, an almost complete sword appeared in front of Chu Yang's eyes. In Chu Yang's eyes, this sword was already complete. If he had to say what was missing, it would be that it was still missing a sword hilt. That was the sword hilt, also known as the sword head. Other than that, it was basically perfect. Chu Yang couldn't help but wonder, the tribulation sword should have segments. Then what were the other 2 segments? An almost complete sword flashed in front of Chu Yang again. It showed a sense of closeness. Chu Yang smiled slightly and reached out his hand. The sword hilt seemed to hesitate for a moment before it cautiously landed in his palm. The sword intent whizzed over and wrapped around it. The sword hilt trembled in Chu Yang's palm with some probing and caution. Chu Yang revealed a warm smile and opened up his heart. The first 5 segments of the tribulation sword were encouraging, waiting, and anticipating. The next moment, the sword hilt made a very slight vibration. Then, the tribulation sword made a clang. The fine cracks that originally existed between one segment and the other disappeared completely. The entire sword was as clear as water and as steady as a mountain. The sword body shone, as if the wind and clouds were moving. Chu Yang suddenly felt a little more at ease in his heart. Yes, it was a sense of ease. The feeling of having someone to rely on and a sense of security. At the same time, his mind became blurry and he trembled. Unconsciously, he entered the tribulation space. He saw that the tribulation space now was more than 10 times or 100 times bigger than before. Purple gas filled the air everywhere. In an empty space, the sword spirit danced with the sword, drawing out mysterious marks. It was the sword technique of the tribulation sword segment. I hold the power of life and death in my hands. When my 5 fingers close, the heavens are about to fall. When the tribulation is scattered, the wind and clouds gather. Outside the heavens, blood is as black as ink. The first update has been delivered. Requesting monthly votes. Let the monthly votes fly for a while. I'll continue to write. There are more updates in the afternoon. 10 chapters today, for more to go. G. To be continued. Chapter 1327. The power of life and death is in my hands. When my fingers close, the sky is about to fall. When the tribulation disperses, the wind and clouds gather. Outside the sky, blood is as black as ink. Tribulation Sword, Section 1. Looking at the sword moves made by the sword spirit, Chu Yang had a strong feeling of, the world is in my hands. This was a kind of indescribable confidence and indescribable arrogance. The power of life and death is in my hands. This was the first move of Section 1. This move was really arrogant to the extreme and had a kind of awe-inspiring power. It seemed to be announcing to the whole world with the attitude of a monarch, the power of life and death in this world is in my hands. This was a killer move with both attack and defense. And it took advantage of the situation. When this move was used in actual combat, the person facing this move, facing this magnificent and irresistible aura, would have a feeling of submission from the bottom of his heart. Invincible. They could only surrender. Under this move, if I want you to live, you will live. If I want you to die, you will die. Life and death are all in my thoughts, and it depends on my mood. The second move, when my fingers close, the sky is about to fall. It made this kind of aura a step further to the extreme. The first move was only used to deal with people, but the second move was used to deal with the sky. When my fingers close and hold this sword, even the sky is about to fall. Not to mention my enemies, they can only be turned into powder under this move. Anyone who is my enemy will not be lucky enough to survive. The third move, when the tribulation disperses, the wind and clouds gather, it was a completely violent attack. It seemed to gather the wind and clouds again and again. It exploded again and again. Each time, it was more powerful than the last. After the first two moves gathered momentum, it exploded completely in this move, just like the waves of the Yangtze River and the rising tide of the sea. When it exploded for the first time, it completely exploded and destroyed everything. Outside the sky, blood is as black as ink. This was the last move. But this move was also the most bloodthirsty. After slaughtering the whole world, it still turned the world upside down and blood flowed like a river. The blood was as black as ink, staining the world. These were the 4 moves of controlling the world. In each move of these 4 sword techniques, they all revealed a kind of aura, control. In Chu Yang's heart, the first few sword techniques of Tribulation Sword flowed slowly like a transparent stream. Then, Chu Yang suddenly realized that there seemed to be a change when he reached the sword hilt. A qualitative change. Did you feel it? The sword spirit asked in high spirits. With the fragment of the calamity sword in hand, the sword spirit's weakness miraculously disappeared without a trace. He instantly recovered his full mental state. Furthermore, it had improved by a huge step. I feel it. Chu Yang said heavily, it seems, these 4 moves. It has the effect of increasing the power of the previous 20 moves. Only with a sword hilt would a sword have a strong support. They also have commanders and strategists, the sword spirit said. Just like an invincible elite force, this is a team. Any one of them is invincible. But when such teams work together, it's easy for them to fight for themselves. Therefore, when such a group encountered a large-scale battle, it was instead unable to win. Because, no matter how strong he is still a sheet of loose sand. At this time, we need a strategist to join in and act as a hand to command and control these experts. From a mass of loose sand, it condensed into a fist, to unleash the greatest battle power, or even more than 10 times the battle power, to seize victory and destroy the enemy. And this strategist has to integrate himself into it first, understand and create the strongest strategy according to its strengths and weaknesses. Therefore, he has to go through the entire sword. Therefore, the sword hilt is the root and the commander. The sword spirit said softly. Chu Yang pondered and said, I understand. For example, my brothers, when we all have great achievements, whether it's Duxing, Shiyun, GMO, Little Wolf, Wushang, Badong, etc., each of them alone is enough to dominate an area. But each of them has their own temperament and characteristics. Therefore, if they are not well matched, they may not be able to unleash their strongest battle power in a team battle. For example, if Duxing is paired with Wushang, their battle power will be wasted. If GMO is paired with Kadi, their battle power will be insufficient. Badong is paired with Jianghu, but they are more than flexible and not steady enough. Therefore, at this time, they have to match different battle power according to different enemies. And at this time, the sword hilt has to balance them. For example, the addition of Tianji. The sword spirit smiled. Yes, that's right. Chu Yang pondered and said, that is to say, among the brothers, Tianji is the soul, the commander and the controller. The sword spirit said, Mo Tianji is not the soul, neither is he the controller, but he is the commander. Chu Yang said, this is like a country. When the army goes out on an expedition, there are generals, deputy generals, and marshals in the army. Generals, deputy generals, and deputy generals each have their own duties and abilities. If they are well matched, they will be successful. And this coordination is in the marshal's hands. Mo Tianji's current position is the marshal's position. It's the position of the sword hilt. And you, Chu Yang, the tribulation sword master, are the controller. You are outside the battle situation, but you control it. You are the decision maker. You point out the direction and then they work together. Your role in the country is the emperor, because only the emperor can command the marshals. The sword spirit said heavily, this is the position between the two of you. Chu Yang nodded. Then he felt that something was wrong. That's not right. According to what you said, then won't Tianji, Duxing, Wushang and the others become my subordinates? The sword spirit thought for a while and said, what I said just now was just a metaphor. However, what you said also makes sense. Because this kind of relationship, if you deliberately develop in the direction of superior and subordinate, then they will naturally become your subordinates. And there will definitely be no resistance. This is the most harmonious relationship between superior and subordinate. But if you don't want to develop in this way, that's fine too. But between brothers, there also needs to be a division of seniority, otherwise, it will still be a plate of loose sand. So, how you want to position yourself is up to you. The sword spirit reminded him, and now is not the time for the final positioning. Chu Yang made a sound of acknowledgement, but he kept this matter firmly in his heart. If they developed into a subordinate relationship, they didn't have to wait until now. If that was really the case, then wouldn't he be separated from the group? Would he become a loner? Chu Yang would rather not have such a relationship, but he didn't say this out loud. When he thought of this, he even became a little wary of the sword spirit, not wanting to let the sword spirit know his true feelings. What I want are brothers, and what I want even more is the joy of brothers being together. Not some hegemony, much less some obedient subordinates who can die for me. Brothers can die for each other because of feelings. Subordinates can die for their superiors because of their rank and mission. Although both were going to die, the difference between the two was like heaven and earth, completely different. Right at this moment, Chu Yang suddenly felt a stir in his dantian. The sword tip, sword edge, sword blade, sword guard, sword tongue and sword hilt all started moving at the same time. Under the command of the sword hilt, a streak of purple aura slowly appeared on every part of the sword body, eventually converging into a shiny purple line and entering Chu Yang's dantian. After entering, it split into three and became 3 strands of primordial real silk, entangling with the original 2 strands of primordial real silk and becoming a small purple ball before it quieted down. Chu Yang had only obtained 2 strands of primordial real silk after expending so much effort. But under the sword spirit's call, the power that was split from them actually increased by 3 strands. It increased by 1.5 times out of nowhere. It was equivalent to a sudden doubling of their strength. Then, when the dust settled on these 3 strands of primordial real silk, a powerful force suddenly erupted from Chu Yang's dantian. This force was so ferocious. It was so domineering and so sudden. It was so sudden that even Chu Yang himself couldn't react in time. With a loud bang, Chu Yang's black clothes exploded into pieces. In this purple crystal cave, he actually became naked all of a sudden. The next moment, the force rushed out of the surface of his body and shot in all directions. Then, with a whoosh, a wave of purple aura suddenly surged in the entire purple crystal cave. Countless strands of purple crystal power and the spiritual energy of the universe contained in the purple crystals suddenly swarmed toward Chu Yang without any regard for their lives. Then, it turned into a ball of fine gas and seeped into every pore of Chu Yang's body. Chu Yang was dumbfounded. He maintained a comical pose and looked at himself with a crooked mouth and slanted eyes. "What's going on?" The sword spirit said, "This is the benefit you deserve after obtaining the tribulation sword fragment." Chu Yang couldn't answer him anymore because spiritual energy was also gushing into his mouth at a crazy rate. Chu Yang felt that at this rate, he would probably explode and die from the impact of this violent energy in the next moment. His meridians had already been expanded to the limit. Wisps of purple spiritual energy, together with the natural spiritual energy in this cave, surged through his meridians like a tsunami. Chu Yang was very puzzled as to why the sword spirit didn't store this force into the tribulation space. But in reality, the sword spirit was watching with a smile on his face. Just when Chu Yang finally couldn't take it anymore, the primordial real silk in his dantian suddenly moved. The heaven-splitting divine technique slowly circulated at this moment. With just a breath, all the spiritual energy of the universe that had entered Chu Yang's body suddenly disappeared without a trace. However, the spiritual energy outside was still gushing in. Therefore, every time the feeling of an explosion that was about to reach a critical point arrived, the heaven-splitting divine technique would circulate and absorb it completely. The color of the primordial real silk in his dantian would become even brighter. This cycle repeated, wave after wave. Chapter 1328. The spiritual energy in the purple crystal cave was endless. It was so dense that it could almost turn into water and flow. Just like that, it madly poured into Chu Yang's body without end. But Chu Yang's layered heaven divine technique was neither too fast nor too slow. It was like an extremely precise and law-abiding machine. Only when it reached a critical point would it suddenly operate and suck, and so, Chu Yang fell into such a cycle. One moment his body was empty. The next moment, it was so full that it was about to explode. Even his meridians started to bulge outwards. Even his muscles were swelling, and the next moment, it was empty again. At this moment, the layered heaven divine technique had completely become a bottomless pit. It was unhurriedly but greedily devouring the spiritual energy in the purple crystal cave. In the end, Chu Yang simply let it go. "Alright, since it's not much of a threat to my life and I'm not needed, I'll just take a rest. You can do whatever you want." Chu Yang simply used his inner vision to check the changes in the primordial real silk in his dantian. After about 2 hours, Chu Yang finally discovered that the color of the primordial real silk had stopped at an extremely bright and dazzling level and was no longer changing. Then, as the next wave of spiritual energy slowly accumulated, another strand of primordial real silk as thin as a hair slowly appeared. Then, Chu Yang watched with great interest as this new strand of primordial real silk slowly unfolded at an extremely slow speed. It slowly grew longer, thicker, and expanded. What the heck? Why do I feel like there's something wrong with this sentence? Then, it slowly stopped at a normal thickness. It started to change color. From a dull purple color, it slowly started to turn into a bright color. Chu Yang finally understood something. "Sword spirit, I understand now." The sword spirit was startled. "What do you understand?" "I understand why the layered heaven divine technique is so slow in this world and has no effect at all." Chu Yang said seriously, "So it's because the spiritual energy in this world can't support the normal operation of the layered heaven divine technique at all." The sword spirit touched his nose and said very doubtfully, I remember. I've told you about this reason before. Chu Yang was stunned. You did? The sword spirit was stunned. Didn't I? Chu Yang, did you say that? Under Chu Yang's clear and questioning gaze, the sword spirit finally felt that his thoughts were in a state of chaos. So he admitted defeat. Well, let's just say that I didn't say that. Chu Yang glared at him and said, You never said that. What do you mean by, forget it? The sword spirit felt like vomiting blood. Then Chu Yang said, You only introduced the primordial real silk the last time. He suddenly recalled that although the sword spirit's explanation the last time wasn't as comprehensive as his own, it wasn't as. However, he did say it, but it was a little vague. He could only say unyieldingly, I didn't. I just didn't say anything. The sword spirit remained silent. This guy was already unreasonable. Furthermore, he was his host. What was the point of competing with him? After a long time, Chu Yang seemed to have heard some movement outside. There was a pa sound, followed by a su sound. It seemed as if dust was falling, or as if sand was scattering all over the ground. What's that sound? Chu Yang was somewhat puzzled. The sword spirit rolled his eyes. The energy in the purple crystal cave outside has already been sucked dry. It has turned into a pile of powder and is falling down from the rocks. Chu Yang said in horror, You're saying the entire cave of purple crystals outside has already been sucked dry? It hasn't even been 8 hours since it was sucked in, right? The sword spirit said speechlessly, This isn't you sucking it in. It's the heavenly divine technique that's sucking it in automatically. This speed is even faster than Ning Tianya, Bu Luqing and Wu Juechen combined. It's absorbed these. If it's converted into ordinary purple crystals, how many pieces would there be? Chu Yang asked with great interest. Not much. The sword spirit did some calculations and said, just a little over 10 million pieces. Chu Yang sucked in a breath of cold air at once, flabbergasted. That's too terrifying. He lowered his head and looked at his stomach, muttering, So much spiritual energy has entered my den. If converted into caddies, it's at least a few 100 kilograms, right? Why don't I feel anything? If there's dregs left after the heavenly divine technique is completely digested, do I have to relieve myself again? The sword spirit looked at him with a face full of disdain. Then, the corners of his mouth twitched as he slowly raised his face and looked at the sky. As he spoke, the sounds of smacking and rustling outside gradually became one. However, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth continued to surge in like raging waves. And the amount and speed of this increase was extraordinarily terrifying. I'm starting to absorb the energy of the purple crystal cores now. The sword spirit said as if this was a common occurrence. Chu Yang suddenly remembered. That's right. You've experienced many such things in the past. Tell me about it? Is every tribulation sword master different? The sword spirit said, Of course. Everyone's foundation is different and their experiences are also different. So their final achievements are also different. The amount of purple crystals absorbed here. Of course, it's also different. In the end, the purple crystals here. It's to test your great Tao foundation and see how great your potential is. Chu Yang said, Oh? The sword spirit said, The first tribulation sword master, Lei Jian, only absorbed 80% of the purple crystals when he obtained the tribulation. He stopped before he could absorb the purple crystal cores. So, in the end, his cultivation stopped at 3rd grade supreme martial artist. Chu Yang heaved a sigh of relief and thought, I'm stronger than him. The second tribulation sword master, Feng Yun, completely absorbed all the purple crystals. When he reached the purple crystal cores, he couldn't continue. So, his final cultivation stopped at 4th grade supreme martial artist. Chu Yang thought, I'm stronger than him too. The third tribulation sword master, Meng Tsong, was similar to the second Feng Yun. The fourth tribulation sword master, Duan Tian, after absorbing all the purple crystals, he also absorbed half of the purple crystal cores. His cultivation reached 8th grade supreme martial artist. The fifth tribulation sword master, Yun Dong, was the same as Duan Tian. The seventh tribulation sword master, Qin Fong, was a rare genius. He actually absorbed all the purple crystal cores before he stopped. His cultivation has reached the level of breaking through the void. He's only half a step away from that level. Yes, he's slightly stronger than Bu Lu Qing before he broke through the void. This person is powerful. Chu Yang sucked in a breath of cold air. The seventh tribulation sword master, Lin Zun, regressed again. He only reached 8th grade supreme martial artist. The 8th tribulation sword master, Jun Lai, reached the peak of supreme martial artist. He's only one step lower than Qin Fong. Chu Yang said thoughtfully, that is to say, the first 8 tribulation sword masters all obtained the tribulation sword fragment in different environments. Then, their achievements were all different? They couldn't all be in the Pagoda Mountain, right? No. They weren't in the Pagoda Mountain, said the sword spirit with certainty. Chu Yang murmured, that is to say, the highest they've achieved is to absorb the purple crystal cores. Chu Yang recalled that he was starting to absorb the purple crystal cores. He couldn't help but feel a little nervous. I wonder how far I can go? The sword spirit laughed. You're definitely stronger than them. You'll definitely be able to absorb the purple crystal jade essence. However, how much purple crystal jade essence you can absorb will depend on your luck. Chu Yang laughed. That's good. As long as I'm not weaker than them, I'll be satisfied. The sword spirit rolled his eyes and thought, how can you be weaker than them? Just based on your current state, you're already much stronger than them. As the two of them waited, the purple crystal cores slowly turned into powder from the outermost layer and fell down. However, it would still take some time to completely absorb the purple crystal core that was several hundred feet long. Chu Yang had been standing naked all this time. Although there were no outsiders, he still felt quite uncomfortable. He took out a black robe from his space and sat down cross-legged. He covered his lower body with the black robe and said, I'll take a nap first. Wake me up when I'm done. The sword spirit was stunned. You'll take a nap? At such a critical moment, which of the previous tribulation sword masters wasn't watching and waiting with full concentration? Now that it's your turn, you actually want to take a nap. Damn, I've really met a fucking monster this time. Can you even sleep? Besides, the previous tribulation sword masters couldn't wait to stand up their feet so that the soles of their feet could absorb the spiritual energy. Chu Yang, you're really different. You actually remembered to cover your lower body with a piece of clothing at such a time? Do you know how many channels of spiritual energy are blocked by your cover? The sword spirit was speechless. Indeed, before Chu Yang could finish speaking, the black robe that Chu Yang had just covered himself with was torn into pieces by the violent spiritual energy and fell to the ground like butterflies. Chu Yang was stunned. I'm going to faint. I'm not even allowed to wear clothes? Cuff whatever. It's not like I haven't slept naked before. Besides, you're not a girl. If you were, I'd take you in. As he spoke, he leaned against the wall of the soul of purple crystal and closed his eyes. The sword spirit looked at the surface of Chu Yang's body that was constantly bulging and falling. He gloated somewhat. If you can sleep like this, I'll really take my hat off to you. After a long while, the spiritual energy continued to flow in wave after wave. The purple crystal cores outside had already started to fall off in large patches. While the sword spirit was stunned, Minister Chu didn't open his eyes again after he closed them. Then, his breathing was light and even, and he started to snore softly. He actually really fell asleep. The sword spirit's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Looking at Chu Yang's skin that was still bulging and falling, he was on the verge of breaking down. My dear brother, you really fell asleep? You're too weird. If the sword spirit had real hair and beard, he would probably be pulling at his own hair right now. I've never seen anything like this before. You're too open-minded, aren't you? What's there for Chu Yang to be open-minded about? Anyway, there's nothing for me to do. I just have to wait for the final inspection of the results. When I look, it's still this. When I don't look, it's still that. It can't be that I can absorb more just by looking, right? Since that's the case, if I don't sleep, I'm just looking for trouble. To be continued. Chapter 1329. Chu Yang slept for a total of 8 hours. Now, it had already been 2 days since he entered the purple crystal cave. Ning Tianya, who was already waiting at the southern entrance to the upper and lower 3 heavens, sighed. What's going on? Why isn't it opening yet? Are you trying to kill me with anxiety? I've already waited here for more than a day. I even found a place to have a drink. I'm just getting a piece of the sword. Why is it taking so long? Supremacy Ning walked over from the entrance, feeling conflicted. He walked over, sighed, turned around and sat down for a while. How torturous. In the cave, Chu Yang finally woke up from his spring sleep. He felt full of energy, and a feeling of expansion and contraction immediately came over. He couldn't help but be stunned. It's not finished yet? The sword spirit said speechlessly. The purple crystal core is almost finished. Less than 10 feet left. Chu Yang was rather anxious. Why is it so slow? The sword spirit said helplessly, this is already very fast. Compared to the previous few people, you're already absorbing at a speed 10 times faster than theirs. Chu Yang rolled his eyes and used his inner vision. He saw that there were already 10 strands of primordial real silk in his dantan, shining brightly. And the 11th strand was in the process of forming, so many already. Chu Yang was rather pleased with himself. He didn't even have 1 strand at first, but in less than half a year, he actually had 11 strands. This was really awesome. Sword Spirit. Looks like it's still going to take a long time. What should we do during this time? Asked Chu Yang. The Sword Spirit grinned. You're open-minded, but I'm not. I'm not in the mood to do anything. Chu Yang said disdainfully, you're so boring. Since the sword spirit wasn't cooperating, Chu Yang simply went into the tribulation space and wandered around. He even had the time to take a bath in the soul-quenching spring. Then, he took out a jar of wine and a few side dishes from the tribulation space. Then, he made himself a cup and poured the wine into it. Unexpectedly, he raised the cup to the sword spirit and said, let's drink today. Who will decide what's right and wrong tomorrow? I raise my eyes and cross my sword. I have a clear conscience in life. Sword Spirit. It's not easy for us to get along. Let me toast to you. Clang. The cup went down. The sword spirit looked at the sword master eating and drinking in high spirits, and felt a wave of powerlessness in his heart. Facing the sword master who was open-minded, able to pick up and let go of things. What else could he say? In the blink of an eye, Chu Yang had downed a jar of wine. Then he took out another jar and opened the mud seal. His body was currently experiencing a storm, so he couldn't use his cultivation at all. In other words, he was drinking like an ordinary person. After drinking a jar of wine, he was already a little drunk. But Chu Yang still didn't stop. After drinking a few more cups, he said, Sword Spirit. Right now, I'm thinking about the words that Shui Leihan asked Ning Tianya to pass on. The Sword Spirit said, oh? What happened? Chu Yang said, Shui Leihan said that my love life is actually destined. Because I was too tough in my previous life, Wu Qianqian treated me with gentleness. Because I was too straightforward in my previous life, Tai Budian gave me wisdom. Because I was ruthless in my previous life, Mo Qinggu compensated me with love. Chu Yang was a little drunk. He said, at first it seemed to make some sense. But now that I think about it, Shui Leihan is just spouting nonsense. It's just an excuse to comfort me and help me untie the knot in my heart. The sword spirit frowned. Then what do you think? Chu Yang said, in the end, it's just my own business. In other words, my feelings for Qinggu can't be changed by heaven and earth. I'm sure of this. So, Mo Qinggu. I must have her. Next, let's talk about Senior Sister Wu. I've always known that Senior Sister Wu has feelings for me. I've always been avoiding her. But I'm a man. Sword Spirit, being together for a long time, you clearly know that this stunning beauty has deep feelings for you. How does that feel? Then later on, I misunderstood her. I misunderstood that she really became the Empress of Iron Cloud. Later on, the misunderstanding was resolved, but she was already on the verge of death in order to save me. If I didn't care about her, or if I could save her but didn't, or if I saved her and then told her that I didn't accept her, do you think I would still be a man if I did that? The sword spirit was stunned. This? Then there's Tai Budian. At that time, I was unconscious, you were exhausted and in a deep sleep, and I was poisoned by the lust dragon. Tai Budian didn't care about her noble status and sacrificed her daughter's innocence to save my life. And without my knowledge, she gave birth to a child for me. When I found out the truth, if I didn't want them and refused to admit it, what would I do? Then what kind of person would I be? But all of this goes against the insistence of my heart from the beginning. So, no matter what I do, it's wrong. Chu Yang drank a cup of wine. If I give up, I'm heartless. If I accept, I'm guilty. No matter what I do, it's beastly behavior. It's unfair to them. So now I've finally thought it through. To think that Xue Leihan was so worried that he specially found someone to talk to untie the knot in my heart. In fact, this is a very simple matter. The sword spirit asked, why? Simple? Chu Yang chuckled drunkenly. Since giving up is painful and accepting it is also painful, then I might as well accept it. What's the big deal? In short, I'm asking for trouble. I'm asking for it. If it were any other man, I guarantee that there wouldn't be so many problems. Suddenly he roared, why would there be so many problems? Chu Yang was drunk. The sword spirit frowned and thought to himself, has he let go of these words? Or has he fallen even deeper? This was really something that couldn't be said for sure. If he was a fickle man, there wouldn't be so many problems. But this man was a man who was so serious about relationships, and he even had the memories of his previous life. The sword spirit sighed. There was really no one who could help him with something like this. Chu Yang woke up and got drunk and woke up again. He didn't know how much time had passed. The sword spirit was already so shocked that he was dumbfounded. The absorption of the purple crystal core had been completed. At present, the purple crystal jade essence was almost at the bottom. However, the absorption speed of the heaven-crossing divine technique became faster and faster. There was no sign of it slowing down at all. Just now, it had already surpassed the total of the previous 8 generations of Tribulation Sword Masters. And the speed was still increasing. And the time taken was only 1/10 of the time taken by the fastest of the previous 8 generations of Tribulation Sword Masters. The sword spirit could only exclaim in disbelief at such a result. To be so perverse to such an extent, this was no ordinary perverse. Rustling sounds could be heard. All the purple crystal jade essence turned into powder. Then, it finally reached the innermost section, where the souls of the purple crystal were. The spirit chi suddenly condensed into a superstorm, violently rushing over from all directions. With the sword spirit's current strength, standing beside Chu Yang, he could no longer stand. He had no choice but to hurry back into the tribulation space and look at the spiritual energy storm outside in shock and speechlessness. The sword spirit was already numb. He had long known that Chu Yang was the first generation of Tribulation Sword Master and would definitely be different from the previous generations. But even in his dreams, he had never imagined that the difference would be to such an extent. Another 5 days later, at the entrance of the passageway, Ning Tianya already had the urge to curse. He had already waited here for half a month. And there was still no news at all. What exactly was going on? Could there be something wrong with this guy? How could there be such a thing? It was just a broken sword, and it actually took 17 to 18 days? In the cave, Chu Yang woke up. The moment he looked at his side, he got a shock. It was already dark, and there was not much of the original bright purple spirit chi left. Only less than 3 feet of souls of the purple crystal were still shining. They were still emitting spiritual energy. The speed at which the heaven-overarching divine technique was circulating in his meridians was obviously 3 to 4 times faster than before. Chu Yang hurriedly opened up his inner vision. With one look, he couldn't help but be extremely shocked. Sword spirit, why are there so many? In his danon, there were already densely packed primordial real silk. A rough calculation estimated that there should be 1 to 200 strands. Each strand was purple and lustrous, dazzling. Recalling that half a month ago he only had 2 strands. This was practically reaching the heavens in a single bound. Chu Yang's eyes shone. Sword Spirit. They're ready. 170. 115. 118 strands. The first 100 strands are forming. He was grinning from ear to ear. Previously, I had 2 strands and was already 2nd grade sword supremacy. Now that I have 200 strands, my cultivation should be at least at Ning Tianya's level, right? The sword spirit pursed his lips. In your dreams. Right now, these primordial real silk have nothing to do with your cultivation at all. Just as I said earlier, how much you absorb here can predict your final achievement. It's equivalent to a test. However, it's also equivalent to laying down the foundation of great Tao for you. That's all. Wanting to use the primordial real silk at the heaven overarching divine technique is no different from daydreaming. Stunned, Chu Yang said, in that case, my cultivation hasn't improved? The sword spirit sighed helplessly. You're already improving. Before he finished speaking, that last strand of souls of the purple crystal flashed and turned into the last strand of spiritual energy, which was absorbed by the heaven overarching divine technique. It turned into the 200th strand of primordial real silk that was about to form in Chu Yang's dantian. Then, the heaven overarching divine technique actually continued to absorb it, before it stopped and stopped. The sword spirit's eyeballs immediately popped out. It wasn't done yet. What did this mean? This meant that so many purple crystals were still not enough. It still couldn't reach Chu Yang's bottom line and couldn't truly test the highest achievement that Chu Yang could achieve in the end. The sword spirit was perplexed. He clearly remembered that when Xue Leihan had set up this great Tao test back then, he had once said, if the Tribulation Sword Master can absorb half of the souls of the purple crystal at this heaven overarching divine technique to build his foundation, then this person's future achievements will definitely be above mine. After Xue Leihan had said that back then, he had even smiled. However, such a person may not appear even once in a million years. To be able to be on par with me is already enough to be of great use. If he's really stronger than me, then wiping out the extraterrestrial demons really won't be a problem. Thinking of this, the sword spirit broke down even more. I'm going to die soon. I'll continue to write the 10th update. Tomorrow, it's still the 10th update. To be continued. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.